All right, let's get it. Drive time. Monday afternoon, 8 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. It is mild and rainy. I think that's going to be the deal for a little while. We have had such a wild winter. It's about 42 degrees and a little rainy and cloudy here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. And as it is every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Happy Monday. Spence Checketts behind the mic. Porter Larson behind the glass today. Got a great guest list producing the program. And a lot to do. Jam-packed sports weekend behind. Jam-packed week ahead in the world of both college and pro football. On Thursday, Miami and Ole Miss. It will be the Fiesta Bowl in Arizona, a venue and a bowl game familiar to a lot of people around here. And then the next day, the two Vegas favorites to win the national championship. It is Oregon and Indiana in the Peach Bowl in Atlanta, Georgia. And we know the NFL playoff matchups, a crazy Sunday night football game after a pretty dog Sunday slate of pro football. Saw the Steelers win the North over the Ravens in just a wild back and forth game. So we've got all the playoff matchups as the wild card weekend in the NFL. We'll get rolling on Saturday with the Rams and the Panthers, then the Packers and the Bears. Then on Sunday, we've got Bills, Jags, Niners, Eagles, Chargers, Patriots. And a Monday night tilt features the aforementioned Steelers hosting the Houston Texans. So we know the playoff matchups in the NFL. We've got a couple of semifinal matchups in the world of college football. And we have a lot to talk about as Morgan Scalley continues to finalize what his coaching staff is going to look like. And Kyle Whittingham continues to finalize his staff, poaching a lot of both Utah and BYU coaches. We will go over all of the hires. We'll talk about what you need to know. Kevin McGivern is your new offensive coordinator after one season in Logan. Bronco Mendenhall tabs Robert Anai to replace Kevin McGivern. And, of course, the transfer portal is open. We still have about a week and a half left in the transfer portal. And so we'll give you an update on what we know as of now. And, of course, that could change. As it does change minute by minute, Utah needs to hire a new strength and conditioning coach. And Morgan's got a couple of holes left to fill. And a lot of players have elected to, but not as many players as I thought. Let me just say this. I think if you're either Utah or BYU, I think you feel pretty good about where you're at as far as the exodus of players. Now, that could change because the transfer portal is still open. No official word, at least what I've seen, as far as Devin Dampier deciding on what his future is. Smith Snowden is going to visit Michigan because, of course. John Henry Daly is going to visit Notre Dame and Michigan because, of course. Utah brought in a cornerback. They used to play for USC. We'll get to know him a little bit. And as any of these announcements become official, we will bring them to you on this radio show. The Utah Jazz are back in action tonight. They're taking on the Portland Trail Blazers. Utah Mammoth are at Madison Square Garden, the world's most famous arena, to take on the New York Rangers. And, you know, as often happens, the Monday after the final weekend in the NFL, a lot of coaches giving their walking papers, namely Pete Carroll, Jonathan Gannon as well, Kevin Stefanski. 3 coaches let go today, and I'm sure it's just the beginning, the tip of the iceberg. The Raiders have the number 1 overall pick, and we'll get into all the storylines you guys need to know. And, of course, college basketball season is now inching into the realm of conference play. So Utah and BYU now playing some Big 12 slates. Jam-packed, ton to do. Happy Monday. Good to have you with us. Hope you had a good holiday season. And now it is the Monday after the New Year. And Larry David has told me I'm not allowed to tell you Happy New Year. That was Saturday. So if you're still saying Happy New Year, please stop. It's done. It's over. We have moved on. And now it is 2026, believe it or not. Monday, January the 5th. So good to have you with us. Our first guest today will be Aaron Falk, the editor of the sports section for the Salt Lake Tribune. Fake news, fake liberal media. So we'll try to have Falk in and see if he actually will tell us the truth. For an hour live in studio, we'll bounce around, a bunch of different stories to get to with Aaron today. Smitty, Richard Smith, rolls by. We'll talk some NBA and some jazz with Smitty. Matt Brown, Extra Points, one of my favorites to talk about the business of college football. And then our buddy Kyle Bonagura will stop by as well. We'll talk some Utah football, some BYU football, some Big 12 football, his thoughts on the staff that Coach Witt has put together, transfer portal, bunch of different stuff to do with Matt Brown and Kyle Bonagura today. So good guest list. Aaron Falk, Richard Smith, Matt Brown, Kyle Bonagura, me, Spence Checketts. Hello, how are you? Happy Monday. And that guy, Porter Larson, you are not allowed to say Happy New Year. Saturday was your last day.
Happy New Year to you.
No.
Happy holidays to you.
No, it's over. We are now into the new year. All of the tomfoolery of the holiday season is left behind.
It's 5 days in. Give me a break.
You feel like you still can wish people a Happy New Year on January 5th?
Sure. I haven't. There's people I have not seen in the new year yet that are, acquaintances or coworkers.
You mean like the majority of our office that wasn't here while we were in here?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, that's what I do. Once I see everyone that I need to wish Happy New Year to, that's when I stop saying Happy New Year.
Fair enough.
Larry be damned.
Since you and I last spoke, Morgan has gone to work, as we knew he was going to fill out the staff of the Utah coaches. Now, as we talked about last week, all due respect to any coach and coaching staff across the landscape of any sport, if you do not have horses, it doesn't matter how proficient you are as a coaching staff. So between the transfer portal and Morgan's decisions to fill out his staff, what are some of your early return thoughts?
Yeah, well, obviously we'll wait till the dust settles on the portal. You're going to get guys in there. You're going to lose guys there. Obviously, Teo Johnson, Smith Snowden, John Henry Daly, those are big names, but they're also big price tags, right, that I'm not sure Utah was necessarily ready to pay. And, hey, go watch the tape, man. There's a plenty to be desired with some of the tackling from both of those guys. So I don't know that Utah was willing to pay the price tag on a couple. So, listen, the transfer portal giveth, it taketh away. But the coaching searches are really what we're zeroing in on. And I think for Utah, man, if you're a guy who likes like legacy Utes, a guy who likes players that have been around, Jordan Gross, Coach Odom, you like what Morgan Scalley is putting together. We expected Colton Swan to be the defensive coordinator. You add in Inoke Bechterfield, a guy that's got a whole wealth of experience. I like what they've put together, but the long and short of it, Spence, is that they've all never been together on a staff before. And Morgan Scalley's never been the head of a staff before. So we're in uncharted territory, whether you like it or not. But I do like the hires. Whether that turns into them being fruitful, we will see. But I do like on paper a lot of the staff that Morgan Scalley is putting together up on the Hill. We'll hear from one Morgan Scalley tomorrow on the station and get his feel of it.
Yes, we will. Reminder, January 6th, the big day for a lot of Ute fans for a number of different reasons. Namely, Morgan Scalley will be officially, he's already been introduced as the head coach. Hell, he coached the bowl game, but the introductory press conference will come your way tomorrow at 2. My question for you, Porter, is do you think they intentionally scheduled Morgan's introductory press conference to coincide with the start of this radio show?
I always think that.
Yeah, so do I.
Right?
Yeah.
Kyle stepping down coincided with the start of our show.
Mm-hmm.
Scalley, introduction.
Yeah.
Start of our show.
Mm-hmm.
It revolves around the draft.
It's one of two things. It's Mark Harlan is scared of me giving my takes right off the bat, or they just want to use this valuable real estate to further their message.
That's it.
I really think it's the first. Anyway, we will bring the presser live to you tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Aaron Falk, first guest live in the studio today. But before we catch up with my guy, AF, courtesy of our good friends at Prize Picks, your friends at Prize Picks too, on a Monday afternoon, it's time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN 700 and run your game with Prize Picks.
New year, new you. Whether you're starting a new routine or making player picks for the first time, trying something new can be hard. But in life and on Prize Picks, it always feels good to be right. With high-pressure playoff matchups every weekend and elite hoop action almost every night, the action never stops, and Prize Picks lets you take control. New feature alert, Prize Picks now has early payouts. If your player gets off to a hot start, you now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. You can find your community on Prize Picks with the new social feeds feature. You can share Prize Picks with your friends, copy lineups from winners with a single click. Copy lineups you like or use them as inspiration for your own picks. You can even follow Prize Picks partners like us at ESPN 700, tail or fade our picks with just one click. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use that promo code ESPN 700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Because on Prize Picks, it is good to be right. All right, a lot of college football guests today. Aaron Falk, Salt Lake Tribune. We'll do a little NBA with Richard Smith. And then two of my favorites, Matt Brown from Extra Points and Kyle Bonagura from ESPN. We've got a busy week ahead in the world of both college and pro football. On the college side of things, we have the college football playoff semifinals. Don't forget, we are your home of the biggest and best football games in the market. Miami and Ole Miss, the two Cinderella stories on Thursday in Glendale, Arizona for the Fiesta Bowl. Then on Friday, the two Vegas favorites, Indiana and Oregon, will do battle in the Peach Bowl. So, of course, the games are what we like to cover and what we like to talk about because that's the point of all this, to actually have some fun football games to cover. In the world of the NFL, we have all the playoff matchups now taken care of after just a wild Sunday night NFL tilt that saw the Steelers take care of the Ravens in a back-and-forth battle. But, of course, around here, a lot of the curiosity lies into what the future of Utah football looks like. And certainly, as we kind of move away from the chaos of what happened behind the scenes that led Witt to Ann Arbor, and Kyle has done a unbelievable amount of national media. I was blinking to see if I was dreaming, watching your boy Dave Portnoy interview Kyle Whittingham on some barstool dopey thing or whatever. Game day, Witt has been on twice now. And so, Kyle has continued to poach coaches from Utah and BYU to join him in Ann Arbor, which, let me remind everybody, is not a rare thing. It's actually super common. You can even look at the staffs that are in place right now for teams that continue to compete for national championships. Kirk Cignetti brought everybody with him for the most part to Indiana. And this is how business is done in the world of college football and the world of college athletics. And as Morgan said during his press availability for the Vegas Bowl, as Utah was able to dispatch of Nebraska in Morgan's coaching debut, if you don't think we have a plan in place, then you don't know who we are. Now, so as we try to ascertain this approach that Morgan is taking, the bottom line is this. If you're a Utah football fan, you have no choice but to put your faith in Morgan Scalley. And we talked about this on my Sunday Night Hit that I do every week now with our friends over at KUTV. You could do a lot worse than trusting a guy like Morgan Scalley, who has been in the game for a long, long time, certainly has a coaching circle of people he knows and people he trusts. And I was actually told over the weekend, I can't exactly say how widespread this would have been, but even if Witt didn't take the Michigan job, there's a portion of people that believe Morgan was ready to just kind of reshape the staff anyway to get his guys in, which you don't blame him at all. It happens across the landscape of any sport on any level. We've seen it here with the Jazz. When there are coaching changes, when Quinn took over for Ty Corbin, cleaned the cupboards. When Will took over for Quinn, eventually cleaned the cupboards. Alex Smith, football in the mind. Alex Jensen spent 1 year with Quinn and then, 1 year with Will, and then went down to Dallas, and now it is all people that Will Hardy knows. This is how it goes. Any sport, any level, guy gets a head job, he wants his guys there. And oftentimes, if there's an ownership change, the owner bought the mansion, but he's going to move in his furniture. He is going to remodel the mansion the way he wants to remodel it. It's not rare. I think it's been received around here as if it's kind of a rare dynamic. But whether it's Witt taking everybody or whether it's Morgan rebuilding the staff, I want to reiterate, there is a mindset and a thought process here in the market that even if Witt didn't take everybody, Morgan would have preferred to bring in more of his guys. And, it looks like Morgan is leaning away from the whole, let's bring in coaches that coached at BYU. Certainly there's going to be a local flair to the staff. I mean, Kevin McGivern spent 1 year with the Aggies, but a lot of people believe Morgan is going to move away from this whole, incestuous Utah-BYU relationship and bring in just Utah guys and don't give a rip whether or not you had coached at BYU, because Morgan is not the guy that has coached in both places. Witt didn't coach in both places, but he played at BYU. Kalani, both places. Jay Hill, both places. A-Rod, both places. Morgan is Utah, period. So it feels like he's moving away from that, right? Moving away from the whole Okay, you coached at BYU, and I knew you from, your time there. But no, Morgan was never there. It doesn't matter to him. And Morgan has gone on record, sometimes not knowing that he was on record, saying what he feels about BYU. Not a fan, right? And Witt wasn't, but Witt played there. It's a different thing. It's kind of a weird dynamic. So a lot of people wondering about the hire of Kevin McGivern, the new offensive coordinator for the University of Utah. And the bottom line is this. Is this a good or a bad hire? I don't know, and neither do you. Only time will tell. A lot of the spin has been Kevin runs a similar offense to Jason. And, of course, the motivation there would be very, very simple, make Devin Dampier feel confident that he can come back and replicate the success that he had under his old coach. But only time will tell with these hires. Colton Swan felt like the natural fit for defensive coordinator because just as Morgan cut his teeth under Witt, Colton has cut his teeth under Morgan. And Morgan was heavily influenced obviously because Witt was his mentor, with the style that Kyle wanted to play. And Colton will be heavily influenced with the style that Morgan wants to play. That is a seamless kind of succession plan that I don't think anybody should be worried about. Now, when it comes to Kevin McGivern, I think it's fair to ask questions. I think it's fair to wonder whether or not this was the hire. A lot of people, nobody had this, by the way. I mean, Morgan did a good job of going about his business. There are rumors about A-Rod. Rumors that A-Rod may have felt a little bit left out because did Kalani get close to accepting the Penn State job and left A-Rod out in the cold? Kyle takes the Michigan job and he hires Jason. A-Rod's name wasn't even mentioned. So did A-Rod feel a little bit scorned? And if Utah came a calling, would A-Rod have at least entertained the option of coming back to the U? So there was that. There was the Jonathan Smith rumor. There were a bunch of rumors out there, and not any of them that I saw really landed on Kevin McGivern until Utah themselves released the press release announcing that this was the hire. So all of this is fun to talk about right now, but until we see proof of concept, I see a lot of people like, oh, this is atrocious. I mean, what are we doing? Are we going back to the Mountain West? Like we're hiring a guy that was coaching in a lesser conference? You don't know how it's going to work. Jason Beck was at New Mexico. He was awesome. The point is only time will tell how this goes down and whether or not Kevin McGivern was the right hire and whether or not he was the wrong hire. Ultimately, it comes down to one thing and one thing only, and that is what sort of talent does he have at his disposal? I have not seen an announcement from Devin Dampier about what his future would hold. And the complication about trying to analyze what this is going to look like is the reality. We don't know what the team is going to look like yet. There's still about a week and a half left in the transfer portal, thereabouts, and most of the defections, interestingly enough, most, not all, have been defensive players. So does that lead us to surmise that Morgan was able to get with Devin and get with the other pieces he wants back to say, look, this is who we're bringing in. This is the offense he runs. Look at how similar it is to the offense that you know, and so the transition will be seamless. I mean, I don't think that's all that crazy to pontificate on that possibility. And only time will tell as to whether or not we will see Devin back. It looks like Bird Ficklin has reaffirmed his commitment. Of course, that's good news. And as we get more official announcements and as we understand what the team is going to look like, then we can dig into, whether or not these hires were the right thing to do right now. But the fact of the matter is, I've seen a lot of reaction to all this stuff. We will not know whether or not these hires are the right direction until we see what it looks like next year. And look, the other thing to keep in mind is this. We can't read the future. If we could, it would be like Biff from Back to the Future 2, and we would just bet on a bunch of sports and make millions of dollars and rename the town after ourselves. We don't know what it's going to look like. So ultimately, the coaches here in state, Kyle himself, Kalani as well, they have been given space to play the long game and grow into the role. Kyle had a couple of 5 and 7 seasons. Early years, there was some, really fun moments and really good wins. And then some seasons where a lot of people around here, and I know there are a lot of revisionist historians that will deny this, wondered aloud whether or not Witt could coach his team into, at the time, P5, now P4 football. Early returns on Kalani, okay? Same deal. Dr. Hill exercised patience with Kyle. Tom Holmoe exercised patience with Kalani. And as fans, there's no such thing as patience. I get it. That's why we love you. That's why you listen to Sports Talk Radio, and we want you to always do that. But I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility to believe that there will be an adjustment period for Morgan Scalley to learn how to be a head coach, because that's how it works. Whenever, like, think about the first time you did anything. Were you awesome at it? No. Did you stick to it and play the long game and eventually figured it out? Whether it's your job or a craft, these things take time. And I think, I don't know, I'm not predicting this, but you know the deal, like, as we talk about, expectation leads to failure. I think you probably should put yourself in a space, if you're a Ute fan, for the need to exercise some patience, because it may not look the way it's looked right out of the gates. But the bottom line is, now you've just got to trust in Morgan and believe that he's the guy, and then let time decipher whether or not these hires were the right hires. But exciting times for sure. Happy for my friend Morgan Scalley and pumped for the future of Utah football. We'll continue to talk college football throughout the course of the show today. We'll catch our first break of this Monday show and bring in the editor of the sports section of the Salt Lake Tribune, Aaron Falk, our first guest on ESPN 700. So this is Dashboard Confessional live at Broadway Media for an appearance on X96.
Yeah, they did in our little cantina here. Those little concerts,
Yeah.
Few listeners in the house and us and Dashboard Confessional.
Wow.
Well,
I thought this was the MTV one, and we could mourn the death of MTV off the air.
MTV Unplugged was a phenomenal series.
Right. That's the most famous Dashboard. No disrespect to
Come on,
Broadway Media acoustic
Yeah.
version, but that would be the one that I would thought you were tapping into.
Aaron Falk is live in studio, editor of the sports section for the Salt Lake Tribune, so fake liberal news coming your way. Also, fan of Dashboard Confessional. I didn't want to make you emotional right away, but Happy New Year, man. How you doing?
I was good, and now my heart's broken into 1,000 pieces.
I know that's the band that invokes the most emotion for you.
It taps into a very real, like, high school heartbreak situation, for sure.
It wasn't really my jam, Dashboard, but they had a couple of tracks that, I think a lot of people latched onto back in the day. They were featured on the Laguna Beach soundtrack, the greatest reality television show in the history of TV.
Absolutely. Shout out OC. Shout out.
Indeed.
Elsie, sorry, not OC. I'm in OC's house, not Elsie's house.
LC and Kristen, remember, they were battling. Our guy Stephen Coletti was crushing it. Remember Stephen?
An all-time run. For
Oh,
Steven.
yeah. Historic run.
Even Talon.
A talent pull. Do you watch any reality TV these days?
I don't, but everybody, I should say, I watched like part of the Mormon Wives, not Housewives.
Okay.
I watched part of that. I've not watched Housewives, although I hear Housewives is the one to watch. It's the most like wild and like that's the real reality heads. They want to see like the Jen Shah return, right? They want to see those people are much cattier than the young Mormon wives.
So the Housewives, that's the Jen Shah one.
Correct.
And the Mormon Wives, my cousin is on that one. He and his wife, they're on that one.
Which one's your cousin?
Zach Affleck. That's my cousin.
Olympus High School.
Oh.
Zach Affleck.
Good knowledge. I have not watched a minute, but I hope my cousin is doing well. I've caught through the family gossip train. Season 1 was rough for my guy, and then he had a nice little redemption arc. Is that fair?
I believe that's the case.
Okay.
And, everyone, so that was my one connection was like, you know what? One of my youngest brother is very good friends with Zach Affleck.
Okay.
And they go, I hate that guy.
Oh, no.
I'm like, oh, come on. He's fine. He's
Yeah.
Absolute outstanding middle infielder from Little League through high school.
He was. He was a good, solid baseball player.
Yeah.
So that's my cousin. And it's not that I'm not supporting family. It's that I have no interest in watching 1 minute of any of it is all.
Completely understand.
Moving on, Aaron. This has been, from my perspective, and like one of the reasons I like having you guys in is you can kind of give us a little bit of a context on just how big the story of Witt stepping down, and then the way we digested it was wild. So Friday afternoon, we're about to start the show. We have a whole show planned. Boom. As the intro to the show is playing, Utah sends the email that Witt is stepping down. Blow out the rundown, do what we can to cover that entirely. And then in real time, I'm following the Sharon Moore story. It's like he lost his job. Like, okay, a lot of people didn't think he was a great coach. An hour later, it's like, oh, he's in jail. It's like, what is going on here? And then as the story goes, a few days later, Witt is engaging with Michigan. The prediction market has him as the favorite. He gets the job. We know the contingency plan that has fallen into place with Morgan, but let's hone in on just the Witt portion. This feels as big of a story as we've had around here in quite some time. Give me your perspective.
No, I completely agree. I mean, I think Morgan will probably be a good to find to maybe very good coach for the University of Utah. I don't think he's going to coach there for 20 years. I don't think anybody coaches somewhere for 20 years at this point.
Yeah.
Because even if it makes sense, and it makes sense that you have a 5-win season, as Witt had, I don't think that person survives multiple years of that and gets the good grace that Witt got to get to this point, right? So all to say, there's not going to be another figure like that, I don't think, at the University of Utah, or and maybe Kalani's that at BYU, but I just don't think there's going to be those types of figures. And in a world where rosters were changing over every 4 years, as it were, and now every year, that single person is the most famous person at the university.
Yeah,
he's the highest paid employee in the state. He's the most famous person. If you're writing a headline, you want to focus on something that people can know. They knew Kyle Whittingham, And so right there, it's a huge story no matter what happens. And then you 10x it with kind of the intrigue and the heartbreak of oh, he might go somewhere else. And what is that? That could have been, I think Colorado State was done by then or whatever, but like that could have been another, sort of, he's going to coach somewhere in the Mountain West. And then, oh, that's a great move. Our grandfather's going off and he's staying active and we love that.
Yeah.
And I think that would have had intrigue. And you 100x it with Michigan.
Yeah.
Kyle has said every interview, this is a top 5 job. It clearly is. And the interest in that program is such that in the very beginning of this, you had Ute fans saying, I like Michigan.
Yeah.
I would root for them.
Yeah.
That's how big Michigan is relative to everything else. And so you combine all of those things with the intrigue of, what happened, what didn't happen, what's, lots of things, lots of speculation out there. This is a gigantic story.
Yeah, no, it is. And the Michigan angle of it makes it, as you referenced, I mean, Kyle became a national name in like 48 hours in a way that he didn't become here in 21 years. And the hits keep coming. Like, I'm waking up, turning the TV on. I'm like, is Dave Portnoy interviewing Kyle Whittingham? Like, what is...
You wake up Barstool?
I do not, but I wake up with my phone and you see the clips. I do have the final 5 minutes of that program recorded because I record a bunch of different stuff. And it's not for me. The first show they did, they were debating how many times you wipe after you go 2. So there you go. Classic Barstool. But Portnoy and, his charlatan grifter act, he's a Michigan guy one day, then he's a BYU guy the next, but he claims to be a Michigan guy. He's interviewing Kyle. Kyle's on game day being interviewed by Nick Saban. And I always kind of track, like, how big is this story based off? Is the newsroom pulling you in, right? Like, does the news want to cover this? Or how many people around the country like want to talk to you because you're on the flagship? And I did a bunch of different random hits. And over on the TV side, the news wanted to cover this. When it comes to your kind of real estate, how do you track just how big a story that we have here?
Oh, I mean, we've got our standard metrics that we use, which is certainly, page views and where the search comes from and how long people stay on your site to read things. And absolutely, it's massive. I mean, easily the biggest story, not just within our sports section over the last little while, but I think you could say at the Salt Lake Tribune over the last 3 weeks, this has been the biggest story. And like I said, I mean, it's clear there are, a lot of people from Utah who are reading with interest and wondering what happened and why. And then even more, just the national eyeballs that come on. Kyle Whittingham is not some, unknown person, but in a way, like you said, he's become a national name in a way that he wasn't. Mm-hmm. People are still learning about him now. And the nation, like college football fans everywhere, are trying to figure out, what exactly do we have? Are we getting, an over-the-hill coach who isn't going to, do anything for us and it's just a stopgap? Or does this guy have something? And people are from every corner trying to find that out and learn something about Kyle Whittingham and the Utes right now.
Yeah, the way I framed it is if you cover college football, if you pay attention to college football, you know who Kyle Whittingham is. But I don't know how many just Michigan football season ticket holders even knew, like, maybe they'd heard his name or something. But, like, the reaction from so many people everywhere has been like, okay, who is it? And then, all right, well, this might work. But it wasn't like if Kalen DeBoer took the job or if some big, like if Saban came out of retirement. So I think a lot of college football people know Kyle, but I don't know how many just average Michigan season ticket holders did.
And I know that there are going to be, Ute fans who are, a little up in arms or would question the idea that people don't know who Kyle Whittingham is. There are so many more casuals out there than you want to understand.
Oh,
if you're
yeah.
listening to sports talk radio, you're not one of them. Right?
Exactly.
Like you care about something in a way that most people do. There are thousands and thousands of people at Rice-Eccles Stadium every Saturday who are diehard Utes fans, and they know the quarterback and Kyle Whittingham.
Right, exactly, yeah. No, that's how it works. I think we do this thing, and that's why I always try to explore it. Okay, how big is this story? Okay, we're being pulled from other directions where we do this thing, I think, in our space and the level of self-importance in our business where we believe that what we talk about resonates with the entire marketplace when it just doesn't. I often talk about hearing reaction when, like, a BYU athlete gets in trouble and then the honor code comes into play and he's suspended or he's punished or whatever. And then you listen to sports talk radio guys, and it's like they're going to change the honor code. It's like, no, they're not, dude. Just because your quarterback got suspended, if this type of story is pulling so many people from so many directions, but I think the self-importance of sports people at times ignores how many people are out there that don't necessarily know any of the stuff that we know because we have to cover it every day.
Right, for sure. And you know, the passion sets you apart as a fan and as a consumer of all this news, and you are going to be in the 1% of the world when it comes to understanding all these things and knowing the name, you know, Kyle Whittingham, Jake Retzlaff, whoever else we're talking about. Like, you are one of the few people that's going to pass that in bar trivia this week.
No, exactly. Like, and we were talking about reality TV earlier. I think the highest rated day-to-day sports show pulls 400 to 500,000 people. The Real Housewives of Mormon, whatever, it's like 8 million people watch that show every week, you know? So it's just interesting to frame it.
It's a Pop-Tarts Bowl every week.
It is. Good call. Pop-Tarts Bowl. The pomp and circumstance of the Pop-Tarts Bowl was something else. But let's move into this space. It's also interesting, and Kamrani joined us last week. He was really good on this. When it comes to things that we haven't experienced here, yet are commonplace everywhere else, the reaction is fascinating. And in every sport, on every level, when a new head coach is hired, he wants his people with him. He just does. We've seen it when Quinn took over for Corbin, when Will took over for Quinn. You just want your guys. And I was actually told over the weekend, I got to be careful here because I'm not saying Morgan would have cleaned house. But even if Kyle didn't take all of these assistants, my understanding is Morgan wants to go in a different direction. He wants his guys around. And I don't think he's really one to do the whole, like, let's keep the BYU Utah thing going. Morgan has been very clear about his opinion of BYU. Sometimes did not know a microphone was in front of his face. But let's hone in on the Kyle portion where it's Jason Beck, it's Jay Hill. Look, I could go down the list. He poached coaches from Utah and BYU, and people seem to be up in arms, but this is just the way the business is.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to go in there and to try to fix something quickly, obviously you have to have a staff that you know.
Right.
There's no reason to try and, we're going to coach up a staff in addition to a roster that we're going to have for a handful of months, and that's it anyways. It makes complete sense on Kyle's part. It makes complete sense for all of those coaches because, like we talked about, Michigan is top 5. Their resources are going to change. The opportunity is going to change. If you're Jay Hill and Kalani just signed a long-term extension and you were thinking, maybe I could be the BYU head coach someday, and then you realize I'm not going to be that BYU head coach someday. Now you are one retirement away from possibly being the Michigan head coach.
Yeah.
Like, it makes complete sense there. And it makes sense that they follow the guy that they're loyal to, the guy that they believed in, that believed in them, gave them these opportunities. And for that very reason, it makes complete sense that Morgan would want to do the same, and it actually is going to probably benefit from doing the same. And I think, you know, certainly in sports, I think in business too, hiring your own people creates a loyalty that you would have to spend a long time to probably earn.
Yeah.
You know? And I have no idea what the relationship between Jim Harding and Morgan Scalley is, right? I don't think that I'm guessing it's respectful, but here's someone who, you know, is older, has had these opportunities, has lived through lots of things. Does he immediately get in line and follow that guy, right?
Yeah.
Or if, you know, that's just an example. Does anybody, right?
Yeah.
And so by being able to hire his people, Jordan Gross now knows that's my king.
Yep.
Like, and I bend the knee and I do what I need to do for that guy.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Absolutely. And I was asked, did a TV hit the night after it was announced that Witt took the Michigan job, and the question that was posed to me is who follows him, and I said whoever he wants, and that's turned out to be the case because it's not just the loyalty to Kyle. It's also your life changes. Like if you're Lewis Powell and you were loyal to Kyle Whittingham, in one phone call, your life changed, right? Like, because this is a relationship business. I don't think there's anybody who Kyle wanted who didn't decide to take the job, right? I mean, that's kind of where I've landed with it.
Oh, I agree. Lots of fans, lots of hopeful fans saying we're going to keep, you know, we're going to rally and keep Jason Beck. We're going to rally and keep Jay Hill. Even if money got even, which I don't know that it gets even forever, right? Like, you know, maybe you can match for a year or something like that, but I think it doesn't get even forever. The prestige and the possibility of you truly are a national championship hopeful, in a way that you're not right now. And so, of course, I mean, it makes total sense. And these guys are, you know, they are loyal to Whittingham, and they are loyal to their families more so than the university.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like, that's something that gets lost in fandom, right? You are loyal to the U. You would do anything for the logo. That's not the case for most people.
100%.
It's still a job.
No, 100%. And I don't know that there's anybody out there. And we talked about this with like the live golf stuff. I mean, I'm a tour guy, as you know. I'm a PGA tour guy through and through. But I can't tell you what I would do if I got a phone call to say, hey, you can quadruple your salary starting tomorrow, and you can do 50% of the work. How many people would really say no to that? Rest in peace, Jamal Khashoggi. We were all, it's a horrible, horrible thing. Nobody's down with all that stuff. But when it comes to your point, you're honed in on what's better for you, and you're honed in on what's better for your family. And it's not like any of these coaches gave Utah the bird on the way out. They just did what was best for them.
And in defense of the University of Michigan, they had nothing to do with Jamal Khashoggi.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. Yes.
There is a difference here.
It's not the best parallel, but the live golf stuff, people are like, how can you take that dirty money? And okay, I understand, stand on your principle, but how they can take it is because they feel like they were doing what was best for their career and their family.
For sure. I mean, this is a completely off subject, but I think we've all been trained so much to kind of root for the spreadsheet and like say things that make sense, even if they're against our own interest. And like, there are a lot of people out there that are like, oh yeah, it makes sense that the ticket prices go up at my favorite team's game because that's just what finance,
right,
what they need to do to make more money.
Yeah.
A lot of people that root for the spreadsheet, even though it's against their interests. So of course, when it is in your interest, you're going to root for the spreadsheet. You're going to root for more NIL. You're going to root for a bigger paycheck for yourself. Like, that's just makes sense. Yeah,
and that's just kind of how things work. And, there's certainly parts of me that wish that the dollar didn't run everything because I mean, look, like the way college football is now, money has permeated into the sport. And look, it's always been there, but now it's right in front of our face. And I'm not one to deny that that's changed the way the sport feels. And it's okay if you feel a certain way about it. But look, back to the whole parallel of if you were offered 4 times the money and half your workload, would you really question where that money was coming from? No, Michigan is not the public investment fund. I'm not saying they are, but it's just a study in human behavior, and I don't think it's very different than what you would do for yourself if you had the same opportunity.
I agree, and I think it makes sense because you don't know when your next – if you're Lewis Powell and you are loyal to the U and Morgan, again, when is your next gigantic payday coming through, right?
Yeah.
Like, it might not happen, right?
Right.
So you've got to do it. I also think we might be on a college – like football bubble at some point. People are spending way too much money in general.
Yeah.
So things have to get back in line at some point.
Yeah.
I feel like, but I don't fault them at all. I mean, it makes total sense to me.
We'll talk about, because I haven't had you in a minute, and to your point about the money that's being infused into the sport. The private equity deal is going to change the consumer experience. I don't know if it's going to happen in 2 weeks or a year, but it's going to change it. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But before we catch a break, the way this all went down, and, it's a story that we've covered on the show ad nauseum at this point, but I haven't kicked the tires with you about it. I do feel at some point somebody is going to get this story start to finish. I don't know who. Maybe it's you guys at the Trib. Maybe it's CK. Maybe it's The Athletic. Maybe it's Kyle Bonagura, who's going to join us later. Maybe it's ESPN. But I don't think we're being told the truth entirely. And it's funny because there are enough like half-truths where you can just be told like, no, this is the deal. He was just ready to go. There was a plan in place. And, my understanding is that there were a lot of money people that just were ready for Morgan. And I think Mark Harlan has taken a lot of heat for this. And maybe Mark has something to do with how this all went down. I think Kyle has something to do with how this all went down. I'm not one to just say, okay, one name here. But if you're Mark and the money people have come to you and they've said, we're not going to write the check if it's Kyle again next year. We've been told for years that he's going. I don't know that there's anything you can do. I think you kind of have to just encourage him to move on. And, this is the plan. So let's just finally execute the plan.
I think Kyle said this at his Michigan introduction, and I think he's spot on that he made a mistake by starting to talk about this by kind of giving a soft deadline, and then every year it becomes a story. It should have just been I've got energy in the tank for a long time.
Yeah,
and then if we actually run out of gas halfway there, then we leave and it's fine.
Yeah,
but by sort of always making it a 1-year deal. Obviously, some people were rubbed raw, and we know boosters who were frustrated with that. I don't know if they had enough influence to affect change there, but certainly there were people giving money to the U who were bothered by that. There are people who want change, who want a more high octane offense, which people believe that Morgan will kind of open up the passing game or whatever. I think there are a lot of those things. And then, when this all happened and Kyle said, he's looking at other jobs, like one of the first things, and I know I'm one of a billion people to do it, but like I texted him around, I'm like, what about a Frank Reich Stanford thing? He gets 1 year custody. They figure it out.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that could work. He got a 5-year deal.
Yeah.
So this was not I'm looking for a hobby. This was, I'm looking for a real job with years and money.
Yeah.
And wouldn't it make sense that he would also want that here if that's where his heart is now?
For sure. Yeah, I think that's the other portion of this that maybe hasn't been uncovered. And I've been told that, towards the end of this year, it's not just Kyle changed his mind to maybe coach another year. It's that he asked for an extension and more money. And the fact that he got it from Michigan, I think, is probably an indicator of that being exactly what he wanted. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the facts, but to me that follows. Like if he had gone somewhere else to be an analyst or something else, that's a very different thing than like I just won 10 games. I view myself as young 66. I view myself as someone that's going to do this for a while still. Like at that point, you don't say I'll take half to stay with you.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
Your ego, your identity, your pride, you want more because you earned it. You just won 10 games.
Yeah.
Something that doesn't happen a lot. So
Yeah.
I think that, like, to me, that makes a ton of sense. I don't know if that happened. I think you're right. Eventually we get to the bottom of this somewhere, somehow. And, that's sort of the nature of these things right now. No, everyone says polite things. Everyone, and like I said, I think Whit was right about being wrong to give the hard deadline, and that caused a problem. And I think he was right in saying that you lose a percentage of the fan base every year. I think that's just a natural thing that happens.
Yeah,
people desire change. There's a reason that we get there's so much more interest in a free agent move or the NIL marketplace and transfer portal and that sort of thing. We all want to play, 2K as a GM and turn the roster over.
Yep.
And there aren't a lot of people out there like, I just want to keep my one team together for 20 years on this video game.
Yeah.
Everyone wants change all the time.
Yeah.
And that happens even for a legend like Kyle Whittingham.
Yeah, it just doesn't happen a ton around here. And I think that's why it's met with a little bit of shock, because change can catch people off guard. I would have loved to be a fly on the wall when Harlan got the alert on his phone and it said, Kyle took what job? Kyle got what job? Because then he's coming for everybody.
I mean, so I kind of thought that, could be a fit, but again, that's someone in Utah. I know Kyle Whittingham. I know the what he's done with the program. Did you, when this happened, did you think like that's a lock? I don't think anyone could have thought it was a lock.
No, I didn't think it was a lock. I certainly talked about it as the thing that would make sense, because to your point, like if Dillingham takes Michigan, does Kyle even look at ASU? Probably not. So of all the jobs that were open, and a lot of hires had been made, like Penn State had moved on, LSU had hired Kiffin. Like the one thing that was open that made sense was Kyle, or it was Michigan for Kyle. The question is, how many no's did Michigan get before they decided to move on to Witt? And I don't know the answer to it.
No. We'll find out. Everyone will find out eventually.
Yes, we will. All right, we'll catch a break. But coming up next, Aaron Falk live in studio. The consumer experience is going to change with the infusion of private equity money. It just will. And then we'll actually move over into Morgan's staff as well, because we have a new staff to talk about. New sponsor on the show, Wasatch Wagyu, premium legit Wagyu beef, New York steaks, 100% Wagyu burger, beef roast, tomahawk steaks, fillets, and now beef jerky. Get yourself some premium Wasatch Wagyu steaks and elevate your meal. It's the real Wagyu beef experience. Fantastic marbling with bold, buttery flavors. A true small business feel with personalized customer service. All the cows come right here from Utah. Wow, that's good. Now, all you got to do is go directly to wasatchwagyu.com and check out their menu. Pick out what you want, and they're going to send off your meats directly to your front door. If you don't want to ship, they have local pickup services available as well. You just pick up from their headquarters up in Heber. Don't wait for Wagyu beef. Treat yourself, your family, and friends, and help support local businesses. Go to wasatchwagyu.com. Use your discount code DJ10 today to get 10% off your Wagyu beef order. our good friends at Wasatch Wagyu. More with Smitty coming up next. Excuse me, more with Aaron. Then Smitty is live in the studio on a Monday show on ESPN 700. I don't want you to get emotional here to start the 3 o'clock hour. But this is more live dashboard confessionals, live from Broadway Media? Live?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Why weren't you here, Aaron?
I would have been. I would have been crowd surfing in this with my lighter up. I don't know how many people were here. Like how many people could have?
Do you know when?
Not that many.
When was this?
Are
they even still around?
Good question.
Dashboard? Do they still tour?
I think so. It's just one guy, right?
Is it? I don't know.
I think other pieces could move, but it's one guy.
Okay, like the lead singer. What?
It was just one guy when he was here.
Does he play the guitar as well?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, see, I don't have a ton of Dashboard knowledge. I'm trying to think the one song that was on the Laguna Beach soundtrack that like introduced me to them. What was their most? Do you remember their most popular song?
The one is there was one on a Spider-Man soundtrack. I remember, and then there's one called Hands Down, which is on that Unplugged thing. That is another popular one.
Hands Down. That may Stolen. Stolen was the one.
Okay.
On Laguna Beach. Vindicated. Vindicated was the Spider-Man song.
Correct.
Screaming Infidelities. That's the one that was like heartbreaking. That's the you got your heart broken in high school. Yeah. Jack that one up and listen to it as loud as possible. Best MTV Unplugged episode of all time.
Oh, I wish I had more in me. I mean,
Nirvana was great.
Yeah.
Underrated. These Are the Days. Who sang that song? I can't believe it's escaping me. I'll think about it. But that was an excellent MTV television show that unfortunately MTV is no longer, correct?
Yeah, I think there's a channel that exists that someone's selling, like, getting commercial money for, just kind of airing recorded programming. But there's no more Carson Daly. There's no more.
That's all right.
Yeah.
10,000 Maniacs Unplugged. It was excellent. But I've told you before, I have this weird soft spot for female artists and singers from the 90s. I was at Lilith Fair. I own that entirely.
That's beautiful.
It was excellent. I had a good time. Aaron Falk live in studio. All right. I haven't talked to you since the private equity deal came down. And so, I find this really fascinating on a number of different levels. Texas Tech has the oil money. BYU has Cookie Bro money and whatever else the whole, community has going on down there. Utah needed an answer to that. But ultimately, when you get in bed with private equity people, the motivation changes when it comes to the bottom line of your business. Oak Trail Capital doesn't care about the Utah fan experience. They're not looking to make sure the muss is taken care of. They're looking to make sure they get a return on their investment bottom line. So this will change the consumer experience. I don't know if it's coming in 2 weeks. I don't know if it's coming in 2 years. But at some point, if you're a Utah season ticket holder, or if you like to tailgate, or whatever it is, you will receive an email saying, hey, family on 3, we love you. We're also charging you 30% more for your season tickets. So as far as how you guys have covered this deal, what do you make of it, and how do you think it's going to play out?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of questions that still don't have answers because nobody knows all the ins and outs of the deal yet, right? They know that there is a deal, but this contract hasn't. We've requested it. I don't know that we're going to get it because this also kind of blurs some of the public nature of the university and its dealings, right? And so there's a lot of things that you just don't know because you don't know all the terms of this agreement, right? And so, I think if you are trying to view this in the most positive lens, you can say, and this is what Taylor Randall and Mark Harlan have said, is that they picked Ocho Capital because they have experience running things. And so maybe they do care about the Utah fan experience in as much as better experience we can charge more for, or we can find a way to increase revenue, right? So, I think that's the best way to look at it. The worst way is, it becomes much more cutthroat, and everything becomes an opportunity for, a price hike and a surcharge. And, and you look down the line, and one day, are we going to take seats out of Rice Eccles to make more suites? Are we going to, does this tailor to a corporate type fan over your regular fan? There are lots of things to consider, but I just don't know that we know yet. And then the extra layer here is that if this is good, your advantage exists for a small window because everyone else is going to try to copycat.
Right, right. And being first to the table is not nothing, right? And I don't know how much of the motivation of Taylor Randall was to be kind of groundbreaking in his leadership for this to move forward. I haven't been told this, but when it comes to like the question, and, I'm surrounded by private equity pros. They're kids I grew up with. My brother and father are now in the space. So I hate to sound cynical, but the question will be, and I'm sure Otro has already asked this, like, how are we generating revenue? How do we generate 25% more revenue year to year? And the cutthroat nature of the way these guys work is whatever is on the books that isn't making money, there's a chance that's going to go away. Now, my understanding of this Utah Brands and Entertainment LLC, and Taylor was pretty forward thinking about setting up the 501c3 or whatever to kind of absorb the business into that space. And the way I understand that, and you guys will probably learn more about this, is that does alleviate some of the concerns about how a publicly owned institution is going to go about an endeavor that is front-facing to generate revenue. I mean, but only time will tell. But the question will be, how do we make more money? And so if this is the football team, the basketball team, and the gymnastics squad, does that mean the other non-revenue generating sports are safe because they're not involved with this? Do you have any insight there?
So my understanding is that Otro Capital will run all of ticketing and add sponsorships and things like that for all sports.
Okay.
Even your non-revenue sports. And what I heard from Taylor Randall was we were at great risk of losing the Olympic sports and the non-revenue sports because of the deficit that the U and everyone else is facing. Yeah. Which is I think something we should come back to in a second. But and so we had to do something radical, and maybe things go south and programs get cut, but they were going to be lost no matter what, because you're running a $30 million deficit all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And so, maybe that works, but again, there's no guarantee, and there's no guarantee for how long. And, like you said, this company is now in the business of making decisions that make money, because that is their job. That is how they will recoup the money that they have given the university already to be part of this. That is how the university is going to pay the $20.5 million in revenue share that it is committed to giving its athletes and must give its athletes if it wants to stay relevant in these sports. And that's how it's going to pay the ever-increasing cost of coaches, right? So they are going to find ways to make money. And I don't think that it's just the hot dog gets a little bit better and everyone's happy to pay double for it. It's going to be across the board. There are going to be things that happen because that's just the nature of business in this world. Now to the $30 million deficit, isn't something fundamentally broken if everyone is in a $30 million hole?
Absolutely. No, college athletics, they don't have a revenue generating problem. They have a spending problem.
Correct.
College football specifically, yeah.
Yeah. If everybody is in the same situation, yes, okay, great. Congrats on coming up with some radical solutions that may save you, that may put you into a better spot. The money isn't there to justify a lot of these things.
Yeah.
And so that's just a big question I think you have to have, and which is maybe why this stuff gets moved out of the public umbrella of a university at some point anyways, and becomes, like we're talking like Super League or whatever, and football breaks off from everything else. But it's so wild that everyone says we are $30 million short because it's $20 million to pay athletes and $10 million to pay our coach at this point, our coaching staff. And the problem is the fans need to pony up more money.
Yeah. Yeah. And the sad reality is that's probably what they're going to ask the fans to do. But no, it's a really good point. Like Ohio State, from what I read, generated like $214 million last year. And Ohio State is in debt. Ohio State is upside down too. That's why the Big Ten brought their private equity deal to their member institutions, but Michigan and USC said, no, we don't need it. Back to Michigan. They've got a $20 billion endowment. But every other school, including Ohio State, maybe the biggest brand in college football, certainly one of the top 3 to 5. Like, I think Utah football generated like $108 million last year. Ohio State like doubled it, and they're in debt as well. So ultimately, yes, college football specifically generates a ton of revenue. It's not a revenue generation problem. It is a spending problem, but that's where private equity sharks come in to say, what can we spend less on to cut our costs to make more money? And where do the revenue streams come from? And it will be the consumer experience. And then in addition, they have allowed certain powerful Utah donors to invest into this project. I don't know who. My guess is their names are on buildings. My guess is we could all just name the biggest Utah donors that we know, and that's probably the group. Because when I was unpacking this deal and I was reading the details as they were coming out, and I was saying, oh, okay, so Ute fans are allowed to invest in this. I had a lot of very rich Ute fans reach out and say, how do I get a piece of this, right?
So you have to be a qualified investor. It is a level of this is not a Green Bay Packers situation.
Right.
Yeah. Extra money and I'd like a share here.
Yeah.
This is a very high level. So you're right. I mean, if you're going to start, it's either the names on the building if you're a Ute fan, or you have money and you're trying to get on the ground floor of really the first Division I major program to offer you this opportunity.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, look, Huntsman, Eccles, Gardners, right, Garfs, probably a very select group, because the $500 million that's been cited, that's not directly coming from Ocho. They're not writing a check for all of it. It's a combination of their infusement of cash and whoever else these other people were allowed to invest, whatever they're putting in as well. That's where you come to the $500 million. But ultimately, I have to believe when it comes to Ocho Capital, they did their due diligence to have enough faith that this will work out. And the only thing that I can land on is the Big Ten. That's the only thing I can land on. To generate revenue up 25% year to year, thereabouts, I don't care how much you raise season tickets, and we'll get to that in a moment. So if I had to guess how this is going to look, so Alex Scheiner was on the board of Legends Hospitality when my father was the CEO, right? And so he knows the consumer experience. He knows how to, and my guess will be Rice-Eccles Stadium. May not be named that. We'll get to that in a minute. But my guess is going to be Rice-Eccles Stadium is going to receive a massive facelift where you're going to have a ton of construction done, and you're going to have bunker suites put in with high-level food. That's what Legends Hospitality did. So Alec has those relationships. High-level food, high-level concessions, high-level consumer experience with luxury suites, and that's what you're going to be asked to pay for. My question is there enough money in this market for Ute fans to pony up what they're going to be asked to pony up to have that game day experience? I honestly don't know the answer.
I don't know the answer either, and it's a question that's been asked before because we're bringing in more professional franchises as well, sports entertainment districts. People, asking for $1 billion in 2 different spots in Salt Lake City. Like, there's a lot of asks of the sports fan in Salt Lake, and
yeah.
I completely agree with you on suites. That's if you can charge $100 for a seat for your 10 seats, or you can charge $1,000 or $10,000 for your seat. That's why the owners are going to do this. That's why the school is going to do this. They're going to take some of that space away at some point. It just makes sense to me.
Yeah.
To do that. And I don't know. I don't know if we are, if Silicon Slopes and whatever our tech unicorns are at this point, if we are at that level in terms of Fortune 500 types or not. But we're probably stealing a little bit away from every other school and or professional franchise in the market right now, because I don't think we're quite there yet. I think we might get there. We're growing a ton.
Yeah.
There is reason to believe that we are on that kind of trajectory, but I don't know that we're there yet.
Yeah, I do think there's a lot more money in our state now than there was maybe 10, 15 years ago. And, smart people that run these private equity firms wouldn't do this without some sort of indicator that they will have a successful investment. But also, a lot of these private equity firms, I don't know what the percentage would be, like throw 10 projects out there and hope you hit on 2 or 3 of them. And the 2 and 3 you hit on can expedite the 6 or 7 losses because there's so much money to be made. But ultimately, my guess would be that Taylor Randall believes that maybe the upgrades to the stadium and the upgrades economically will cause the Big Ten to take a second look at Utah football as to whether or not, they'll allow access, because the revenue streams you'll get as a full, share member of the Big Ten, 40 to 50 million more per year than it is, in the Big 12, which is why, Aaron, a lot of people, including Yogi Roth on the show last week, talk about the sport as a P2 sport, not a P4 sport, right? And so I think that's probably motivation for Witt to take the Michigan job because now you're in the Big Ten. If you're not in the Big Ten of the SEC, in a way you are on the outside looking in. But ultimately, again, I'm just connecting dots. If you're Otro Capital, in order to invest all this money, in order to find a 25% revenue bump, I don't know where it comes from outside of Big Ten access. And how realistic is that, I guess, is the question.
Well, I think we are heading that way. And will Utah be in or out is really the only question, right? We are getting to that place where I think both SEC and the Big Ten will expand a little bit because they are going to swallow everything else and then choke everyone else out.
Yeah.
If it feels that way now, it will definitely feel that way.
The future in the sport is in their hands.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, if this is a gamble to get a pass into that club, it makes some sense there. And if from the U standpoint and from Otro's standpoint, like I said, this is the first time someone's really going to be able to do this with a college football program.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't you want to be on the ground floor and take that chance and be that person?
Yeah. And the other thing, and the reason I said, the stadium might be not be named Rice-Eccles Stadium anymore is you see this in every single sport. And certainly because private equity is now allowed in pro basketball and pro football. It didn't used to be, but now it is allowed. They'll look at every possible thing, naming rights to the stadium, highest bidder. We've seen the Delta Center be 7 million different things. It's whoever's writing the check. It's America First Field, prior to being Rio Tinto. Like, a company will come to the table and offer Utah Athletics probably tens of millions of dollars to name the stadium after the company. And we all love the Eccles. Obviously, if you're a Ute fan, you owe a lot to Spence Eccles. If you're a sports fan in our market, you owe a lot to Spence Eccles, including Utah Jazz, for allowing Larry Miller to, borrow against his companies to buy the Jazz and keep the Jazz here. Like, this is not an anti-Eccles rant at all. It's if a company contacts Utah and says, we'll pay you $15 million per year to name the stadium after our company, you better prepare to walk into the gates of Cafe Rio Stadium on Saturdays or whatever it is.
For sure.
Yeah.
Ask Aggie fans. They're going to Maverick Stadium it's not a cool name. It's a gas station.
Right.
There's a reason to do that. There's money to be had, and these guys will find it in every way possible. And, teams are doing this. The Jazz have an official bank and an official credit union.
Yes, they do.
Those aren't the same thing.
Yeah.
Any way you can figure out a way to get something sponsored or to upcharge, it just seems to be the thing that's going to happen.
Everything will be sold. I mean, Moment of Loudness brought to you by Lake Effect.
Don't say it.
Everything will be sold. Like wherever there is revenue to be found, the private equity bros that are now part of your business will tell you to go find it. At least that's where I've landed on it.
Yeah, I think that's where I've seen what private equity has done in certain spaces, and
yeah.
I've been someone who's worked at a hedge fund, and the Salt Lake Tribune was owned by a hedge fund that sold the printing presses, and then now rented the printing presses, so we could liquidate cash really quick selling these things. Now we're going to rent it back for the time being, at a cost, and also at the time the Tribune and the Deseret News had what was called a joint operating agreement, where they at that point, the Tribune, I believe it was something like 60-40. The Tribune got 60% of every ad that was sold by this one agency, and the Deseret News got 40%. They renegotiated and flipped, so you now get less because you can get cash for your investors really quick. And then there are layoffs, and then there are cuts, and there are cuts, and there are cuts.
Yep.
And, I hope for Ute fans that this is, a good situation, and maybe it doesn't hurt to see a sponsorship on something that doesn't kill you as a fan. That's something else, and you can be happy and know that your offensive line is better because it's a little bit more corporate in there, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But my personal experience as someone who's lived in that world is that it can get rough.
Yeah, for sure. And it doesn't always happen that way, right? I've seen a lot of people just broad brush like, private equity equals death. Doesn't always happen that way. Not all private equity is created equal, but I completely understand the skepticism from certain corners of Ute fans wondering if their consumer, experience is about to change. All right. Before I set you loose, why not? World Cup is right around the corner. RSL players report this week and they have done nothing. And I just want to shout out Nate Bench, our guy. We got season ticket holders tuning in for a little RSL news. CK went scorched earth on him last week. They move Ojeda for GAM, not TAM kids, GAM, general allocation money. Keep that in mind. They've moved Vera, and they've brought nobody in. And players report. What exactly are we doing here?
I wish I could tell you.
Yeah.
We don't know. They made the big move to put Jason Kreis in charge of everything. And he talked about we're going to double our scouting department. We're going to find different ways. We're going to be competitive. They never promise they're going to spend the most amount of money, but they are going to be competitive, is what they say, and contend for titles, which I think you can do in Major League Soccer without spending the most amount of money every year. I do agree with that, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, to Nate Bench's delight, it seems the Anelli rumors have died down, which is the one thing that we know. But who scores goals? We know who's in goal, and that's it.
That's it. Yeah, my guy Victor Olatunji, dude, breakout year. Your guy Rowan Cruz.
I liked Olatunji.
Yeah.
Nate defended Cruz a lot more. When I watched Cruz, I was like not that inspired.
Yeah.
He's a Cruz defender. I thought Olatunji made a lot of sense. Looked good actually.
Cruz defender Nate Bench. Yeah. I wouldn't have guessed that. When's the last time you fired up your Xbox? Any FIFA?
FIFA. It's been a while,
dude. Mine's too old to play the new game.
Mine actually died. We had a power outage.
Rest in peace.
Died this week. So.
All right, man. Well, look, great to see you. Yeah. Thanks for your time, okay?
Thank you, sir.
Aaron Falk, go to sltrib.com, support our guys. We'll catch a quick break. Richard Smith live in studio. We got Matt Brown, Kyle Bonneger, a busy Monday show. Good to have you with us on ESPN 700. Wait, is this song called New Year? This song is called New Year's, right? Something like that, New Year's Day, U2?
There you go.
It works because Richard Smith is a big U2 fan, and it is the New Year. Although, Smitty, Larry David has told me I'm not allowed to say Happy New Year after January 3rd.
That's the Larry David bit. In fact, one of his great bits, I saw him on several years ago with David Letterman, obviously years ago, and David Letterman said, "Hey, Larry, do you have any New Year's resolution? Do you do a New Year's resolution guy?" And he goes, "Yes." He goes, "Yeah, I have a few." He goes, "They're not big things, but they're important." He goes, "Like what? Like can you give me something?" He goes, "Sure." He goes, "Here's one. This is brand new. I just thought of this recently." He goes, "Pee before you go." And he goes, "What? I don't know what you're talking about. What does that mean?" He goes, "That means wherever you're going from where you are now, you should go to the bathroom before you leave, whatever it is." He goes, "And at my age, that's right at the top of the list of things I have to follow on a daily basis. Wherever I'm going, pee before I go. That's an important thing for me." And David Letterman looks at me and goes, "Boy, I never thought of that before. That's really important, isn't it?"
Well, I'll tell you this little piece of advice, especially if you're in New York City. Pee before you go. We are spoiled here in Utah. We've got a 7-Eleven or a Maverick on every corner. If you've ever been in New York, you will be stunned at the lack of public facilities. So if you have to go and you're stuck in the middle of Central Park, you're probably going outside. I'll just leave it there. All right. How you doing, man? Happy New Year.
Same to you, Spence. Yeah, great New Year, and glad to be on with you this week. This is fun. Actually, New Year, all the University of Utah football news and all that stuff, and everything that's happening.
Well, it's interesting because I wanted to get your perspective on this. Of course, it has been as wild of a 2.5, 3 week news cycle as we've had around here in a long time. Kyle to Michigan is seismic. It's a big deal. It's a big job, and he's become a national name in a matter of a week or so in a way that he never was here in 21 years. But, of course, Witt has taken a bunch of coaches from Utah and a bunch of coaches from BYU because he wants his guys there. And a lot of people upset about this. But I've been taught that this is how it works, right? And so in your 40-plus years in the NBA, whether it was Quinn taking over for Ty, look, Ty was a Jerry guy, right? But Quinn takes over for Ty, Quinn brings his guys. Will takes over for Quinn, Will brings his guys. Like, in any sport, any level, a guy gets hired as a head coach, the first thing he wants to do is be surrounded by his guys, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. And the main thing about it, Spence, is because when you're in the professional sports business, which obviously college sports is, you're always concerned about the people working around you, either looking for other jobs or sometimes looking for your job.
Right.
And so you want to have people who you trust. You want to have people who you feel to some extent are loyal to you. But obviously you need people who can get the job done and all of that. And but the more important aspect of it is you want to be comfortable in your job so that you can focus on the things you need to do as a head coach. And the only way you can do that is if you have people around you that you trust, that you know are going to do the job that you're asking them to do to the best of their ability. And so in that regard, Kyle Whittingham taking a bunch of people with him, that's completely normal. Guys aren't going to go. They're not going to Michigan because it's less prestigious. Mm-hmm. They're not going to Michigan because they're making less money, right? They're not going to Michigan because it's a lower profile job, right? All those things factor into the equation. This is like, if, somebody gets the chance to go, be the manager of the New York Yankees or something, and you got a nice job somewhere, with the Kansas City Royals or, with the Oakland A's / Las Vegas / Sacramento A's, you get a chance to go work for the Yankees. You're going to go do it because of the prestige and the situation you find yourself in that sport. And Michigan is one of those guys. They're one of the big boys in college football.
Yeah, they are. And again, it's been pretty fascinating to because the way I've kind of framed it is if you cover college football, if you watch college football, if you love college football, you probably know who Kyle Whittingham is. If you're just a family man in Ann Arbor and you have season tickets and you kind of enjoy going to Michigan games, there's a good chance that you don't know who Witt is.
That's right.
Isn't that wild to think of?
No, and I think Spencer's that way. In a lot of situations. I mean, think of it this way. For instance, who is you probably know this because you're in the business, but who is the longest tenured Division I football coach right now?
It's Kirk Ferentz, right?
Kirk Ferentz at Iowa.
Yeah.
Well, how many of the casual fans in college football know Kirk Ferentz?
Right.
Know the name or what he means to Iowa football.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle was the second longest tenured at 21 years. So, people on the east of the Mississippi, they don't pay much attention to that, unless you're one of the real big names. And so, there are people there who I'm sure didn't quite know who he was or knew of him a little bit or whatever, but they don't pay that much attention to it. But they're going to find out very quickly how disciplined his teams are and how hard they play and how they get after it, especially in the trenches where most of the games are won or lost. And Kyle's got a reputation to be able to build teams around that. And he's going to a great situation because at Michigan, Spence, he gets into every living room. Okay. Now, whether you get the kid or not, whatever, all that stuff, comes and goes with the territory. But, unlike working at Utah or BYU or any of the good schools around that are on a run right now, if you're Michigan, everybody takes your phone call.
Mm-hmm.
You at least get to talk to them face-to-face or meet the parents and all that kind of stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how Kyle's group does in terms of the recruiting issue.
So we move over to Morgan now, and we'll do a little Jazz. The Jazz are playing the Blazers tonight, and some interesting conversations surrounding what they may or may not do prior to the deadline. We'll do that in a bit. And a lot of people want to know, is Morgan making the right hires? Or these the right coaches? I don't know, and neither do you, and neither does anybody else. Only time will tell. But there's always a little bit of trepidation from a fan base when it's time for something new. And both Witt and Kalani received patience from their bosses while they were learning how to do the job. Kyle had a couple 5-7 seasons, a lot of noise around Kalani because he wasn't necessarily winning at the level BYU fans were used to, and it was independence at the time, so there was a lot of just funky dynamics. Dr. Hill, patient with Witt. Tom Homo, patient with Kalani. Obviously, both hires paid off. Will Morgan get the same opportunity? Because I can't predict the future. No idea how this is going to go. Is there a chance that he struggles to acclimate for something that he's never done before? Yes, there's a chance because he's never been a head coach before. In the case that it doesn't look and feel like it did under Kyle, for the most part, Kyle didn't kill it every year because nobody does. Will Morgan get the same opportunity to learn on the job, or is this new money era of college football something that puts more pressure on him to win right out of the gates?
Yeah, well, it's a very good question. They're coming off such a terrific year at 11-2, with the Las Vegas Bowl win last week, and so they're going to be there's going to be a lot of expectations. Morgan knows the landscape. He knows what the deal is. He knows the league he's in. He's all that stuff. So nothing's new to him. What's going to be new is his own day-to-day responsibilities and how he manages those and the group that he puts around him to be able to affect that change. Think of it, Spence, with all the success that Kyle Whittingham had at Utah, they had something like, it's off the top of my head, but I'm going to say something like 8 different offensive coordinators?
I think the 8 is the number. Yes, and every year, it seemed like for a while, it was a different coordinator every year. Yeah.
And so even when he was having success, he wasn't satisfied and, with that side of the ball and what was going on, but they still managed to figure out how to win games, a lot of it, with defensive acumen. And I said, as I mentioned a minute ago, really recruiting to the trenches and controlling the line of scrimmage a lot of times and on both sides of the ball. And but still, Kalani Sitake, 3 or 4 years ago, a lot of rumblings in Provo. I don't know, is this working out? What's going on or whatever? Fan bases get goofy and they get anxious. There's going to be a lot of anxiety, if Utah, comes out next fall, and starts out 3-3 or something like that, loses an early conference game, and but that's you're going to have to give him time. You're going to have his staff and time, but college football is different now, Spence, because it's you got different guys wearing those uniforms every year, and
Yeah.
we're right in the middle of it now with
Yep.
the transfer portal and the quarterback from Cincinnati now going to go to Texas Tech, and the quarterback from TCU is going to Indiana. I mean, it's like this free for all. And I know people in the media have turned it this way, but now I'm hearing college coaches refer to college football at this moment in time as the wild, wild west. And they even acknowledge it publicly that this is what it is, and none of us know where the bullets are coming from, what angle, and we're just trying to keep our head above water because I don't know if I got my quarterback in place, or if he says he's staying this week and then next week I read in the paper that he's off to the University of Miami, or whatever it's going to be. And so it's really crazy in terms of how that's being legislated right now by the NCAA. It can't stay that way. It's got to settle down at some point to something that's much more reasonably administered by the universities, by the coaching staffs at different programs. But at the moment, this is what you got, and you're either in or you're out, and you got to be in with 2 feet, and you got to figure it out, and you got to swim the best you can at the moment.
Yeah, I know they're trying to, the term guardrails, what does it even mean? I know they're trying to implement some things to kind of corral this stuff. One transfer portal now that opened on January 2nd, 15 days. But, there are staffs right now that have coordinators coaching in the semifinal games that have taken head coaching jobs in other programs. And I heard Urban talking about this morning. If you're offensive coordinator, if you're trusting him to call plays and you're in the college football semifinal and he's already taken a head coaching job elsewhere, and I don't even blame this guy because he's focused on being the best head coach he can be. It's like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He's preparing to call, plays in potentially the biggest game of his career, and then when the coach's meeting is over, he's getting on the phone to try to recruit kids to go play for him. I don't even know how you do the job, to be honest.
Yeah, well, it's very awkward, and it's very awkward for coaches. It's very awkward for players. Look, the kid at Mississippi just supposedly announced today that he's going to go back to Mississippi if he can get his 6th year of eligibility. The Chambliss kid, the quarterback, but there was speculation that he might be going out the door, and they're still playing. I mean, how do you manage that if you're a coaching staff, knowing that you are in the middle of it right now in the college football playoff, whether you're Mississippi or whether you're Indiana, any of the 4 teams that are still left, you're dealing with underclassmen on your team that might be getting offers from other schools while you're still practicing and trying to get ready for another game. That doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
And yet these guys have to deal with it. And so, that kind of stuff has to be able to change, because that just on the surface doesn't make any sense to even the casual fan. And yet that's what you're dealing with if you're a coaching staff right now.
Yeah. All right, before we get to the Jazz, you've been to some practices up on the hill for Alex Jensen. Of course, you know Alex because you worked with Alex when Alex was with the Jazz, and everybody here knows Alex because he was an awesome player for some of the best college basketball teams we've ever had in the state. We're now in conference play. The fans aren't showing up. You feel bad for Al and the program because they don't get any community support. But from a competitive standpoint, and look, Arizona is one of the top, right now, they're the number 1 team in the country. And even if they weren't number 1, they're probably one of the top 5 teams in the country. But they roll into Huntsman Center and just smoke Utah. It was over pretty quickly. Do you think this is what we're in for now that Big 12 play is here?
Yeah, it's going to be a tough year for the Utes. They really have the in my opinion, Spence, basically the same team they had last year. It's different guys, different names, but the players look the same. They're the same level, caliber of athlete of basketball player. They've got 2 scorers on their team who are one-on-one players, and they don't have much else after that. They're going to struggle during the Big 12 season, in my opinion. They'll win a few games because they'll be tough defensively at times. The other day they weren't against Arizona. Arizona put up almost 100 on them. But as you say, Arizona is one of the top teams in the country, and they just have better athletes right now. The Big 12 is a tough conference. You just go right down the list, whether it's Baylor or Kansas or BYU, Cincinnati. Any of these teams are very good teams and very good programs. And the U, got off to a late start in the recruiting last spring, and it's showing up. And they're going to struggle this year. They're going to play hard. They're going to get after it. But a lot of nights they're just going to be overworked, not overworked, overmanned by the skill and athleticism of the teams they're playing, and they've got to get a full recruiting cycle under their belt so they can see, how they can build from this foundation this year.
Well, maybe they could just go sign a draft pick that isn't getting minutes for an NBA team.
They could do that.
James Najee, of course, made a lot of news. Baylor signed Najee, who was drafted by the Pistons but never appeared in an official NBA game. He got some time the other night, and the poor kid just got booed off the floor. It's not his fault. Right. What's the conversation surrounding this dynamic, Smitty, that is so wild to even wrap your mind around the potential of an NBA draft pick or a G League guy who isn't satisfied with his lot in life going back to school to play college basketball? Yep. It's so weird to even say out loud.
Well, it is. And in the last couple of weeks, I've talked with both Wes Wilcox, who's the general manager up at Utah, and with Kevin Young, the head coach down at BYU, attended their practices and just checking in with them to see what's going on, how things are going with the recruiting stuff. And they both were trying to explain to me how that kind of an issue works. I still don't think I understand fully why the NCAA is allowing them to do that. What the little loophole is that they've created or something that allows a guy who hasn't played but has been drafted. The rules forever were once you entered the NBA draft and you made yourself eligible, there was a cutoff deadline. And when you passed that deadline, which was usually a few weeks prior to the draft, then as a college player, you were done. Didn't matter if you got drafted. Didn't matter if you ever played for a team. And once you got by that deadline where you had declared, this is what I'm going to do, I am going to be a professional in some regard, then you were done. The NCAA was done with you. They crossed you off the list. That's it. And your college career would be over, would be done. Now, the kid gets drafted, doesn't play, but he's playing the G League. Now they say I don't understand how he's eligible. I don't get it. But again, this harkens back to what's going on in the NCAA in general now with transfer portal, with NIL, where they're opening the gates. They're letting everybody come in. They're letting everybody do. You can almost call it, Spencer. The NCAA is the anti-Trump rule or something like. They're letting everybody in now. Everybody gets to come, and it's kind of, I don't know how they legislate. I don't know what the semantics are behind or the logistics behind how someone like Najee gets okayed. But I do know this. I do know there were several schools that I know of that were going after him when they heard that this was the ruling, and they were trying to get the kid. So it wasn't just Baylor. There were a lot of schools lining up to try and get him to say, well, if this is the rule and this is what we're doing, then we're getting in line and we're trying to get our piece of the pie. And it was Baylor who ended up getting him. I mean, there'll be some other kids like that as well. And it's I don't know what you say about college basketball in that regard now because those floodgates are open. It just seems like anybody can go anywhere at any time, and everybody's just grabbing for that brass ring, and trying to get whoever they can in their roster. And it's I don't know how you keep track of it if you're working in it, and I don't know what the rules are that allow you to do that stuff. It's nuts right now.
Yeah, this is the rule. The NCAA bylaw 12.2.2.2.1.
Yes, I remember that rule. I remember that.
Nobody remembers the rule. Yes. But this is the rule that apparently people are can't believe I just said that. Let me repeat. This is NCAA bylaw 12.2.2.2.1, which reads, before initial full-time collegiate enrollment, an individual may compete on a professional team, provided the individual does not receive more than actual and necessary expenses to participate on the team. So essentially what that is saying is if he went over to Spain. Najee was playing in Spain for 4 years. Yep. So Baylor's paying him more than what he was making in Spain, and that's how they're justifying being able to get this done. I mean,
Well,
I think that's the deal.
Well, and I also know part of it, Spence, is that in the NBA at least you could draft guys. I'm sorry, NCAA. You could bring guys over who had been playing on a so-called professional level overseas, depending on how much they were making at the time, what their level of play was. You could bring them over. A lot of kids, high school level kids, as we know them in the United States, play for club teams where they're actually being compensated something. And depending on what that is, you could recruit them and bring them over to the play at the NCAA level. That was the rule, if you remember, a lot of years ago that affected Enes Kanter, who came over from Turkey, was recruited by Kentucky, went to Kentucky, was at school there. And then the NCAA at that time said, no, he can't play at Kentucky because he accepted money for playing 2 games earlier, that year, from a club team in Turkey. So that negated him being able to participate with Kentucky and actually able to play an NCAA game. So he never played college basketball. That's how the rule has changed from then to now.
Yeah.
Where now it doesn't matter just if you fall under that guideline, which to me it seems silly. I don't know what the NCAA is thinking in that regard, but again, if you're a team, if you're a coach, if you're running a program, they tell you this guy's eligible now because of whatever the loophole is. We're going to go after him because we're trying to get the best players on our team to compete the way we can in order to be better a team, but also for what, first and foremost, to try and save our jobs, to try and show that we're trying to compete in any way that we can.
Well, again, according to bylaw 12.2.2.2.1, he is eligible to play college basketball. So there you go. All right, let's do a little jazz before I let you get out of here, Smitty. The Keontae stuff is just real. It just is. I think it's time to say out loud, like all of the conversation about how much time he spent in the offseason to improve his game has led to this season where we're getting close to halfway through the regular season games that will be played. He's the Vegas front runner for most improved player. All the prediction markets have him as the favorite to win most improved player. So I was skeptical based off of moments I saw from him as a rookie, moments I saw from him as a second-year player that just didn't last and weren't that sustainable. And I know we talk about it every week, but if this is real, I think it does change who this team is and maybe could be. Like last year, I'm like, is he even an NBA guy? And now I think I'm ready to say I feel like he's probably part of this team's future. Where are you at with Keontae?
Well, he's really improved this year. I would say this, Spence, to be the other guy, the squeaky wheel. He has not improved very much on the defensive end.
No, he is not. Yeah.
And so he's still not playing that end of the floor. Okay, nobody pays attention to that in the NBA now because everybody's trying to outscore everybody else. That's what the Jazz are doing at the moment. The Jazz score more points and give up more points than any other team in the league on average.
Mm-hmm.
They can really score the ball. Keontae George has shown that he's a bucket getter at the NBA level. He can do that, and he's gotten better at it. And so I like that part of his game. He has improved that part. He's not afraid to take tough shots. Sometimes he doesn't. He takes ill-advised shots. Okay, that's part of it when you're a scorer, which I think he is going to be at the NBA level. Sometimes you have to live with the bad shots they take because they believe they can make any shot that they go after. So he has improved that. He still doesn't have the assist-to-turnover ratio you'd like to see. It's been around 2-1. You'd like to see it better than that, but that has gotten a little bit better, I would say. He still doesn't play defense. Still, his body language sometimes is a little poor. When he gets a call on him that he doesn't agree with, and he has to deal with that. He has to get better at that. But he has gotten better overall as a player to impact games. Now, what does he do going forward? I still think his position is going to be as a scorer for a team off the bench, for a team that's serious about winning, that's competing. But he has shown that he's an NBA level scorer, and he has gotten better at that this year, and that's to his credit.
Yeah, it is, and I have been impressed. I'm ready to say that I feel like this is real, and we'll see what happens. We are 1 month away from the trade deadline, and the storyline of that top 8 protected pick to OKC will continue to permeate until we kind of get a clear direction. But before I set you loose, Smitty, some sad news, over the holiday season as Barbara Layden passed away on Christmas Day. And we lost Frank a few months ago, and, we allocated an entire show to Frank's memory and was able to attend Barbara's services. Unfortunately, was out of town for Frank's. And, she just always felt like she was kind of above it all, right? She just was elegant and graceful in her own way. And you never heard Frank's name without Barbara's name. You never heard Barbara's name without Frank's name. And great to see the family. Scott did a great job, and it was beautiful service. But as somebody who's very, very close with the Laydens, just a memory or two on Barbara as she passed.
Yeah, what a great person, what a great friend, and just a great advocate for the state of Utah. She, when they moved here, she ended up working to get her graduate degree in social work up at the University of Utah. She spent a lot of years working for agencies to help people who were substance abuse users and trying to counsel them into, people who were alcoholics or people who had drug issues and trying to help them and be a counselor and a friend and a shoulder for those kinds of people. And she really worked hard in the community. She was always with Frank, at all of these events, charity events. It was a dual thing. It wasn't just a Frank Layden thing. Barbara was right there, not only supporting him and being right side by side with him. And Frank always acknowledged that. He always recognized that Barbara was just as much a pillar of the community as he was, maybe not as publicly to a lot of people, but she was always there, always supporting these causes. And we lost a great lady, a great advocate for the state of Utah. And both of them now are back together again in heaven and having a few laughs, I know, and enjoying themselves together as they should be. And they're great friends that we will truly miss.
Well said. Yeah, life well lived, certainly, both of them, as you referenced, great pillars in our community. All right, my friend, great to see you. Have a great week. We'll get you back on next week, okay?
Thanks, man.
The great Richard Smith. We've got 2 hours down. We have 2 hours to go. I want to let you know that League One Volleyball is Salt Lake's first professional volleyball league. The next home game is January the 22nd. Get tickets at lovbsl.com. That's lovbsl.com. Matt Brown joins us coming up next. Back to college football on ESPN 700. Got the Alex Jensen Coaches Show tonight when we sign off at 6 o'clock. Reminder, tomorrow, right off the top, is the Morgan Scally introductory press conference. So stay tuned to the station at 2 o'clock. At the start of our show, we'll bring coverage of that live as Morgan is officially introduced as the head coach of Utah football. Our next guest, always enjoy when he can take some time. Matt Brown, Extra Points. Matt, how are you, sir? Happy New Year.
Hey, it's a happy New Year to you, too. I appreciate you having me back. It's been sounds like you've had a busier month than I have.
It has been as chaotic of a 2.5-week news cycle for those of us that do this job out in Salt Lake City than, quite frankly, Matt, maybe ever. So I want to start right off the bat. Give us some perspective on just what a behemoth job Kyle Whittingham took as the new head coach at the University of Michigan.
It is a pretty big job. It's a different kind of rebuilding situation than, say, coming in after Penn State or Baylor, where there's been enormous scandals that then cripple you recruiting wise or cripple you administratively here for a little while. But he is stepping into a role where there's likely to be significant turnover and tumult within the university above him. This is not a place to go. This is not a job to take if you want to know exactly who your athletic director is going to be over the next 3 years. Nobody knows for Michigan because they have a gigantic external review happening right now. The school doesn't have a permanent president. There's going to be some pretty significant regent elections for Michigan, which there in that state, those are publicly elected. So there's going to be a whole lot of change behind Kyle's door. And then he's stepping into a place where expectations are massive, and you have not only two other superpowers in your conference, but also apparently like the world's most dangerous team, the Indiana Hoosiers. So it's a place where obviously you can win. You're going to have a lot of resources, but I'm going to be interested to see how a coaching staff that's really heavy on guys with Utah ties and are not accustomed to this massive rivalry, that are not accustomed to some of really, I think the level you have to recruit to be successful at a place like Michigan. I'm not saying you can't do it, but I think that's going to be an interesting change because the expectations for Michigan are championship every year, and that doesn't leave a whole lot of room for error.
Since you referenced Coach Witt is taking some Utah coaches with him, a lot of Utah coaches with him, and some BYU coaches with him as well. You have tapped into topically what has been and has become a very sore spot for people out here who have reacted in a way where they feel like Witt is doing this intentionally and trying to pillage the program that he has left behind. But this is the name of the game, Matt, isn't it? I mean, when a head coach gets hired, really no matter where it is in any sport, he simply just wants his people with him, yeah?
I mean, especially if you're in your mid-60s and you're not going to spend the next 10, 15 years building new relationships with new staffers. If you've worked with these guys before, you can win a Power Four conference championship. If you have continuity with your system, it would make sense. If you're somebody who's getting your first head coaching job or your first head coaching job completely across the country, where you haven't been doing this as long as Witt has, it's not uncommon to keep more of the staff or to rely on a search firm or maybe an agency to find some other assistance. But for people that are making a change at this stage in their career with these level of expectations, and also, kind of a university mandate to clean house a little bit. Yeah, you're going to need to bring in a bunch of people that weren't previously on that staff. If you spent almost all of your career in Utah, of course it's going to be mostly Utah people. I get why Utah fans are frustrated, especially given the timing of this exit and everything else. But I wouldn't necessarily look at that as some kind of personal vendetta against the university.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think there probably is a side of Kyle that, because the word around here is that, and it's clear that he wasn't ready to stop coaching. It's clear because, he's coaching. And it's clear that he wasn't looking to do this for another year because he signed a 5-year contract. So I'm sure there's a side of Kyle that feels a tad bit disrespected. In fact, Gary Anderson, who was Kyle's defensive coordinator for a long time and now is I believe he's a defensive analyst at Brigham Young, was asked, should BYU and Utah fans be afraid of Kyle poaching BYU and Utah players. And Gary himself said, well, we should probably blame Utah for pissing Kyle off. Like, there might be a side of Kyle that is kind of enjoying the fact that he has been able to take a lot of very valuable pieces away from a program that was ready to see him get gone, even though he did not want to get gone.
I mean, I don't think you could blame anybody for being in their feelings a little bit, and given the way this ended, right? With you've done so much at one program where they would be very justified in putting a statue of you, but if it's difficult everywhere, whether it's Utah or Ohio State or Florida State or Penn State or any program, when the legend wants to stay, and it's more common for the program legend to stay probably 3 or 4 years too long, and then you have an uncomfortable firing, or you have what happened with Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State this year. Clearly, both sides didn't want that, but again, is there maybe some element of like, yes, I'm glad to stick it to the AD, or I'm glad to stick it to one or two other people, sure, but if you're not going to coach another decade, you can't win a national championship at Michigan just based on spite. You're making these moves, whether that's roster-wise or coaching staff-wise or anything else, with the eye on what gives you the best chance to be as successful as possible in the short term, because there's not going to be too many more years left for do-overs, especially given how tough this league is. So if there's guys that end up leaving from Utah or BYU or Utah State or anywhere else in this market, it's because this coaching staff thinks that those are the guys they need to go win a Big Ten title, not what can I do to make a couple of university officials in Salt Lake mad.
Yeah, no, well said. One of the interesting dynamics of the news cycle surrounding Witt to Michigan has been the reaction from people that honestly didn't seem to know who Kyle was. And the way I've framed this is if you're in the ecosystem of college football, if you cover college football, if you love college football, you know who Kyle Whittingham is. It's not a new name for you to hear. But if you're just average Joe, lives in Ann Arbor, and Michigan football season ticket holder that enjoys to go to a game, there's a good chance you have no clue who Witt is. And a lot of people reaching out like, okay, what's the deal? Who is this guy? And seeing the nation get to know Kyle has been a really interesting thing for all of us around here who obviously not just know him, but know him well. What was your reaction from a national standpoint as far as hearing that Kyle was the guy? And give me your take on how many people, like, this was not Saban coming out of retirement or DeBoer leaving Alabama. No. It seemed like a lot of people were actually getting to know Witt for the first time.
That's definitely true. Like my phone was blowing up a little bit over the couple of days after this happened, from national reporters who are like, "Hey, you're like our special Mormon correspondent, Matt. Like, who is this guy? Or what can we do? What can you tell us about the context of what's happening here?" Because yes, I know Utah football has been an extraordinarily successful program over the last 15 years, but Utah, with one or two exceptions, has not really been in contention for a national championship. So if you are a national voice that's centered in deep Big Ten or SEC country, there hasn't been a ton of reason to be super plugged into most of the programs in the West. And that's, I know people will be mad about that, but like if your job, if you're based in Chicago or if you're based in Nashville or Charlotte and that's the job, you are going to be more familiar with the stuff, the top 5 programs in the Big Ten, top 5 programs in the SEC, than you are with Utah or Arizona or a lot of things happening in Big 12 or the old Pac-12 footprint. I like a lot about this hire. And I think if, as I'm an Ohio State fan, I think I would have been really terrified about this maybe 6 years ago, because Michigan needs a guy who has the reputation and the credibility to say, I am an honest person. I do not have an Instagram. You do not have to worry about me getting into problems because of my social life. I am a grandfather, and a lot of other people in this industry will be happy to vouch for the fact that I'm do not bring some of the off the field baggage that maybe some other coaches do. But not only that, like, I think Utah plays a style of football, and the things that Kyle has done at this program are things that Big Ten and Michigan people are going to really like. Like I think I've written this a couple of times. Utah, in some ways, has been basically Polynesian Iowa over the past couple of years. If you want a team that's absolutely going to hit with violence dominate people at the line of scrimmage, which is spiritually what Michigan fans have been wanting since 1910. There's not many better programs to go and get a guy and get some guys than Utah. So, I mean, there's going to be some provincialism like, this guy doesn't go to bed angry at Toledo, and he can't recite chapter and verse from this rivalry back from the 40s and 50s, like maybe other people at Michigan could, like Harbaugh certainly could, right? But the first time you win 10 games, no one's going to care.
No, 100%. You referenced the you're an Ohio State guy, and during Witt's introductory press conference, I think he was asked at least 3, if not more times, if he hates Ohio State, and he's like, "Yeah, I do now, I guess."
I do now.
Yeah. But we really we were lucky to have a great college football rivalry out here with Utah and BYU. So Witt's not new to a college football rivalry, but for those of us here in this market that don't fully understand how deep it runs between Michigan and Ohio State, what would you say to that?
Well, I think what I would say, I would say that, one of Witt's professional mentors and friends is Urban Meyer, who understands that rivalry better than just about anybody, and I'm sure has gone to great pains to impress about how important that is. It's funny because I've had this similar conversation with people out here, and what I would tell them, having some familiarity with both rivalries, I think on an interpersonal level, the BYU-Utah rivalry is actually more actively hostile than Ohio State-Michigan.
Okay.
But I think part of that is just because Utah and BYU fans live on top of each other, right? Like in any neighborhood, any congregation, any office, you're going to have both of them. Unless you live in Toledo, if you're in Ohio or Michigan, that generally isn't the case. But this is the one game that will get you fired. Or that is more important than almost anything else. And you saw people at Ohio State ready to run Ryan Day out of town, despite having one of the 3 best winning percentages of anybody in college football, just because he basically never lost any game except for this one. And that was kind of the case for Michigan too. You can win Big Ten titles, you can maybe even win a national championship. But if you lose this game more often than you win, that is what people are going to remember. And if you have make it to the Final Four and you lost to Ohio State, a lot of people are going to say this was not a successful season. And I can't imagine. I think if BYU made the playoff, nobody would care 1 week after the Utah game because, oh my gosh, this is one of the highest marks here in school history. I think if Utah made the playoff and lost to BYU, most people would be pretty thrilled. If Michigan makes the playoff and loses to Ohio State, absolutely nobody will be happy. That's the difference.
Got it. Excuse me. One more thing on this, and you alluded to it earlier, because we've been, it's Morgan Scalley's time, and both Kyle Whittingham and Kalani Sitake had a couple of seasons where the fan bases from both programs were kind of wondering, like, well, wait a second, is this guy really, is he the man for the job? 2012, 2013, Utah 5-7 overall, 3-6 in conference, 5-7, 2-7 in conference. And Kalani, same thing. It was independence for the Cougars, so a really difficult time in a lot of different ways. But 2 5-7 seasons, Matt, in Ann Arbor would get Witt what?
He would be fired after the end of the second season.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any doubt in that. If you miss 2 bowl games in a row at Michigan, you will not get a third year, regardless of what whatever the buyout is for anything. It's also, I think, a little bit comparing different eras because in 2012, 2013, if I'm remembering correctly, a lot of those disappointing years for Utah were as they were transitioning out of the Mountain West and into the Pac-12, and it took a lot longer to turn over your roster. During the really lean years for BYU during some of the low runs and independence, I think we could both look at their roster or watch some of those games and say there's a lot of dudes here who probably should be playing in the Big Sky. And that's not something that you can necessarily flip in one season before the transfer portal, before changes on recruiting limits. Now, a lot of teams are going to turn over 40 guys in 1 year. The good news is that means you can bounce back from a bad year pretty quickly. The bad news is it's really difficult to have any kind of continuity, and people are going to be even less patient than before. Michigan has potentially an outstanding young quarterback. They have potentially an outstanding defense, and they got to keep everybody together, even though I think some people that Michigan would have liked to have kept have left. And you have to be good right away. which was not really the case, I think, certainly when Kyle was hired, and when lots of other people come into this market now. The expectations are too high.
Yeah, I wanted to move over here. Dan Lanning has talked about this, and other people have talked about it as well, as Dan is going to lose both coordinators to new jobs, as Will Stein is going to take the Kentucky job, and Tosh Lapoy is going to become the Cal head coach. And so we find ourselves, Matt, in this weird scenario where the transfer portal is open and teams are playing for national championships with coordinators that have already taken head coaching jobs. And it's just got to be extremely awkward to try your best to trust your coordinator to call the plays and go all in on winning what's the biggest game of your career when they're already focused on the new job that they're taking. You don't blame them because all these guys want to be head coaches. So I like this single transfer portal. I do like the change, but do we need to end the season on January 1st so we don't run into this conflict of interest?
I think it would be wonderful if that could happen. And Dan is not the only coach I've heard kind of make this proposal. I'm sure it'll be discussed a little bit at AFCA. The major challenges, of course, are the calendar issues that have nothing to do with actual college football. There's a major concern among broadcast partners and major conference commissioners about pitting major college football postseason games against the NFL. We saw that in the early round of the college football playoff this year, where we had games on TNT and CBS, and we're getting demolished going up against even not that super impressive NFL games. So it's harder to find unique windows and get everything done before January. And the big problem that we have with transfers and with everything else is making sure that it's tied to the academic calendar. Yeah, in a perfect world, none of this stuff would be happening until well after the end of the actual season. So if the season ends the last week of January, then in a perfect world, you'd have the portal window open in a week or two in February. But you can't have people transferring in the middle of a semester. No one's going to be able to be academically eligible in time. You're not going to be able to even get admitted in some of these places. So either you kind of just have to decide where you're willing to make the sacrifice. Are the power brokers in college football willing to sacrifice a lot of television money to start the season a week earlier and move everything else back? Or are you going to have coaches being okay with potentially getting rid of spring football and just saying, all right, I'm not going to have my roster here until May, and going that way so you can have more time to do the portal. And right now, I don't think anybody's really particularly excited about giving up either of those things. So we're stuck with this.
Wanted to revisit something you and I discussed. We had Aaron Falk in studio earlier, who's the editor of the Salt Lake Tribune sports section. And I hadn't talked to him since the deal was reported between Utah Athletics and Otro Capital, the private equity deal that was consummated. We had you on the day after to kind of help us understand. Aaron talked about, we still are waiting for details of what the contract looks like. So is it the FOIA request? Is it grandma request? The Trib has filed this and Utah has not responded. And you're the guy to kind of walk us through how this process works, because until somebody gets the details of what the contract looks like, we are left to kind of just pontificate on possibilities. So the Trib is trying to get it. They're getting pushback. Take us through this process. How does this work?
Sure. And I don't mind telling you guys, I've done the exact same thing. Probably 45 minutes after I saw the initial press release, I filed a bunch of grandmas. I would imagine any other news organization worth their salt in around here has probably done a couple of the same. What typically happens when you file one of these requests, every state's a little bit different, but you're trying to lay out as specific as possible the kind of records that you're looking for, whether that's a signed contract, whether that's emails between people from this private equity company and Utah's regents and everything. But because every state has different laws, some states can take much longer to respond to these requests. Utah, unfortunately, does not have a very reporter-friendly open records law compared to even many other red states. And they can drag this out a little bit. So honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if the only way that the general public ends up learning about the full financial terms of this deal is if somebody sues, whether that's the Tribune, whether that's me, whether that's just a coalition of Utah taxpayers. Whether that's one very bitter BYU fan with a lot of money, I have no idea. I haven't gotten anything back from the University of Utah yet myself. I'm not expecting to get anything back for the next 2 weeks because they generally go slow with these kind of things. But if you're not willing to release a lot of the terms up front, and the university has already confirmed, hey, when this thing's done, we don't have to respond to your FOIAs anymore because this is going to be a private third party organization. I think that the school is going to try and drag its heels in releasing stuff unless a judge makes them.
Now, to be clear, that's not, and you did a good job of outlining the laws in our state, which I'm not surprised to learn. The media has trouble getting access to certain things that certain people want to keep behind closed doors. But how difficult is this process just kind of compared to what you go through if you want to learn information with other major member institutions?
I wouldn't say that Utah is the worst, but I would not give it any gold stars. You know, as somebody who files these requests across 200 institutions across the country, the places where I tend to have the most trouble are in Georgia, which has a hilariously unfriendly law towards media outlets where every school doesn't have to respond for at least 90 days. The Florida institutions are very difficult because they've also kind of reconstituted themselves as third parties. And the Oregon schools are often frustrating because their state law allows them to charge a lot of money. But it's a crapshoot. There are blue states that have truly horrific open records laws like Virginia and New York. And there are some like Texas, which are shockingly open. If I want to get information from the Big 12 conference office, I can get it from Texas Tech or Houston way faster than I will from anything in the state of Utah. And we will have to see. We have been. I don't want to make any threats here or anything, but I'm not expecting the university to willingly release this information, especially if it ends up being stuff that maybe they would prefer the world not know about.
Fair enough. Hey, before I say you lose, one of the things, and this isn't surprising, and I'm not breaking any news, but one of the things that I was told recently about this private equity deal is that Otro Capital, in conjunction with Taylor Randall, the president of the University of Utah, do foresee this economic infusion into the program, utilized for improvement with the facilities. I think Rice Echo Stadium, which it may not be named that because they're going to probably sell everything, but it's going to look different. They're going to build bunker suites, and then they're going to ask you to pay a lot more money for it. All the things you and I have already discussed. But the end game, I can tell you, is the Big Ten for Utah football and for Otro Capital, because if you're looking to generate 25% more revenue or whatever it is year over year, there's only so much you could do by charging $8 more for a hot dog or whatever. Do you think at some point, whether it's this year or next, we will see meaningful realignment, and does it include the Big Ten?
I don't. I think that we will begin to see more meaningful realignment probably in about 3 years as the existing Big Ten and Big 12 television contracts begin to wrap up and go for renewal. But for one, and I think I've said this on the air here before, I make no assumptions that by 2031 the Big 12 or the Big 10 will continue to exist. If there is, they may, but the next realignment move may very well be half of the Big 10 and 3 ACC schools and half the SEC creating a completely different entity away from the NCAA. And then could Utah be a part of that? Maybe not. It kind of depends on who funds it. What I can say is the last time the Big Ten expanded, and I got a chance to see some of the television data that they got from some of their third-party consultants about who adds value and who doesn't. And the Oregon and Washington schools barely did. And there's a lot of kind of going back and forth among league administrators that I've talked to about whether Florida State even would. There's no doubt in my mind that Utah athletics on the field would be additive in any number of sports within the Big Ten. Is there a way to make the math work, especially as the kind of media industry consolidates and there's fewer and fewer potential bidders, in a way to generate more money than maybe some of the LA schools are producing for the Big Ten? I find that dubious. That may be the ultimate long-term play, is whatever the top biggest level of college sports looks like, Utah wants to be in it. But the only place I ever hear anything, Utah in the Big Ten, is always from people in 801. It's never from anybody in the Central Time Zone.
Well, that's not great news, Matt, but, I appreciate the truth serum there. Hey, where can people go find your work, bud?
You can go find our stuff at extrapointsmb.com. Since the holiday break, we have released 2 different completely free games for people to play, along with our athletic director simulator game, which was kind of, jacked by ESPN. And now is still free to play, I think, for another day or 2. We've got stories coming out about collective bargaining, about how Indiana has managed to build a championship caliber team, and maybe Utah might be able to follow that book. You can find everything at extrapointsmb.com.
Thanks, buddy. Be good. We'll chat soon, okay?
Oh, of course. All right. Do well, guys.
Matt Brown, Extra Points. I'm telling you, it's a one-stop shop. If you want to understand the current landscape of how the mechanisms of college football are changing, it's the best place to go at Matt Brown EP on X, and then extrapointsmb.com on the interwebs. All right, I want to tell you about a new sponsor on the show, Wasatch Wagyu, premium legit Wagyu beef New York steaks. 100% Wagyu burger, beef, roast, tomahawk steaks, fillets, and now beef jerky. Get yourself some premium Wasatch Wagyu steaks and elevate your meal. This is the real Wagyu beef experience. Fantastic marbling with bold, buttery flavors. A true small business feel with personalized customer service. All the cows come right here from Utah. Shout out to the cows. Now, all you got to do is go directly to wasatchwagyu.com and check out their menu. Pick out what you want, and they're going to send off your meats directly to your front door. If you don't want to ship, they have local pickup services available as well. You just pick up from their headquarters in Heber. Don't wait for your Wagyu beef. Treat yourself, your family, your friends, and help support local businesses. Go to wasatchwagyu.com and use the discount code DJ10 today to get 10% off your Wagyu beef order. Shout out to our good friends at Wasatch Wagyu. We'll catch a break. More college football. Kyle Bonagura coming up on ESPN 700. The Alex Jensen Coaches Show. I almost said the Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show.
There you go.
I mean, just autopilot. Breaking news, we will not be bringing you the Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show this week or probably anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't know that I'll be producing another one of those. Didn't know that last one would be the last.
No, it is the Alex Jensen Coaches Show, and during football season, it will be the Morgan Scalley Coaches Show, and I'm such a creature of habit, I'll just have to pound that into my brain. Our next guest covers college football for ESPN. I always enjoy catching up with Kyle Bonagura. I will break my Larry David rule, Kyle, and wish you a happy New Year. Happy New Year. New Year, excuse me. How are you, bud?
I'm good. I subscribe to the rule as well, but I appreciate you making bypassing the rule on this January 5th.
There you go. There you go. All right. Since you and I last spoke, when we last spoke, Whit had just taken the job. And the question was, who would follow Kyle to Ann Arbor? And the answer is whoever he wanted to followed him to Ann Arbor. How have you kind of just digested the news cycle watching Whit fill out his staff?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think it feels a lot like I expected it to be. I mean, a coach is to a certain degree is as good as his staff, right? And I think that going to Michigan offered a really cool and unique opportunity for a lot of those guys, right? To get out of their comfort zone, probably make some more money, move into the Big Ten, and at a place where you have a kind of a legit shot to regularly compete for national titles. It's like that. That's hard to say no, especially if they have good relationships with Kyle, which I'm sure most of those guys, if not all of them, did. Right? They wouldn't have followed him if they didn't. So it's certainly a gut punch to Utah, and we talked about it before. I mean, you kind of go with the coach in waiting thing to preserve continuity and all of that, and in the end, it's not going to look like last year's staff really at all.
So as you can imagine, it's been, as I've told you before, I'm a former social media addict in recovery, and unfortunately, I relapsed with this news. All of us are just like constantly checking to see which coaches go, when the announcement would come down. And over the course of about, 2-3 hours, there were 5 or 6 announcements, and some continue to spill in. Michigan hired Utah's strength and conditioning coach today. And as you can imagine, and look, I understand there are a lot of people around here that are really upset. They feel a bit betrayed, feel like Whit did them dirty, did them wrong. But this is just how the business works. Yeah. I mean, like, if you have any other examples, Kirk Cignetti took everybody with him. I mean, typically when a guy gets a head coaching job, and certainly when you're 66 and you don't have years to establish relationships, you want your guys around you, right? This is just kind of the cost of doing business.
Yeah, I think it's really that simple. I mean, it's easy to kind of get emotional about it and like feel like there's a sense of loyalty and all those things. But look, the moment Kyle was hired as the head coach at Michigan, he hired to do everything in his power to field as good a team as possible. Like that's what he's getting paid. What is it, $8-9 million a year to do? And so it made sense for him to go bring the guys who he's comfortable with, and that's just how this works. But I think that like where this is different, right, is that, the whole idea of Tab and Morgan, however many years ago it was now, was to prevent something like this and to kind of keep it rolling. And I think that's why this one is so interesting, right? Because you have a guy, I mean, there's not really a good comp for this where a guy has been at one place for so long, is on, looks to be ready to retire and then, kind of changes his mind and then pulls the staff out. I mean, it feels unprecedented. I don't know if there's another example that we can dig up, but it certainly feels new and unique. And it's just like a tough deal for Utah, right? Because you want to be able to appreciate everything Kyle has done for the program, but you also want the Utes to continue to perform at a high level. And so, he's certainly undercutting Utah's ability to be successful. Like that's very clear, but again, cost of doing business. I think that, I think there's still the dust is still settling on understanding like the circumstances of why it played out the way it did, like why Kyle isn't still the coach at Utah. Eventually I think we'll have a pretty good idea, but yeah, it's until that's fully settled, it's going to be a tough one to process.
Yeah, and the difficult part, because look, as I've talked about all day and will continue to talk about, if you're a Ute fan, you just have to put your trust in Morgan. It's time to ride with Morgan. It's a new day, it's a new era. And both Kyle Whittingham and Kalani Sitake needed some patience from their bosses and their athletic directors as they kind of were learning how to do the job. And Witt had 2 5-7 seasons and 3 wins in Pac-12 play, 2 wins in Pac-12 play. Kalani had 2 or 3 years where you were wondering if he was going to be able to keep the job. And so I want to move into the space of what you think is next under Morgan. But the problem is we don't know what the team is going to look like. Now, he finalized the majority of his staff. There's still a couple of holes that need to be plugged. I think the good news is, at least so far, Utah hasn't been unscathed by the transfer portal, as Smith Snowden and Teo Johnson and John Henry Daly and some others have left. Not a lot of offensive defections as of yet. Devin Dampier has not announced his intent, but I think it's fair to at least, acknowledge the possibility that because Morgan has never been a head coach before, it's going to look different. It's going to feel different. And I'm not saying it's going to be better or worse, but from a fan base perspective, you might want to prepare for just an acclimation period. Is that fair to say?
No, I think that's fair. And I mean, I certainly wouldn't write off Utah as being a team that can compete in the Big 12. I think it's the type of program where that should be the expectation, regardless who the coach is, right? Like resources and history and all those things, like they all add up to Utah, maintaining a consistent place, certainly in the top, third, 25% of the league year after year. Like that should be the expectation into perpetuity. Like as long as the conference looks the way it does, I guess. But yeah, there's also that Morgan's never been a head coach before. It's a very complex job, and even though he's been on the staff for 20 years, whatever it's been, there's a lot of there's a learning curve there. Being involved on both sides of the ball, roster management, and there's also just a learning curve of this era of college football. Everyone's kind of learning as they go, right? So even guys who had a lot of success for the past 5-10 years, like maybe they're not cut out to manage a roster in the way that is necessary nowadays as well. And so, maybe Morgan's really cut out for that. And, you can certainly imagine a scenario where like they don't drop off at all and they just kind of keep it going. I mean, I think David Shaw I think we talked about this before too, but like David Shaw coming off of Jim Harbaugh is a pretty good example of, Harbaugh wasn't at Stanford for a really long time, but enough, right? And established a high level of success. And then Shaw just kept it rolling for several years. There was no drop off immediately. Different era too with transfers and all that, but like they were able to kind of keep things rolling and really elevate that program over a few years, right, with the new coach. And so, yeah, Morgan certainly has the ability to do that. He's very well thought of in the coaching communities, obviously well thought of on campus, having been the DC for so long and not being really the identity of the program. Like, I think there's an expectation that they will continue to be good on defense. And look, we'll see what happens on offense. It wasn't always pretty when Kyle was in the seat either. And so it's only fair to kind of expect some of those ebbs and flows just the same as it was before.
Talked about this a couple of times, but I've chuckled because in this little echo chamber, in the sports talk radio echo chamber of Salt Lake City, Utah, of course, you know who Kyle Whittingham is. And of course, you know intimately about who he is as a coach, as you've watched him build up a program for the course of 21 years. And I think it's been maybe a little bit surprising, but more or less comical to see people like discover who he is for like the first time. Like if you cover college football, if you know college football, if you watch college football, you probably know who Kyle Whittingham is. If you're just average Joe in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and you're a Michigan season ticket holder, there's a good chance you have zero clue. And so as somebody who covers the sport from a national perspective, just talk about that dynamic about like this isn't Nick Saban coming out of retirement or Bill Belichick taking his first college football job. Anyone who knows college football knows that Witt is a great coach, but a lot of people, I feel like, from a national perspective, are like discovering who he is for the first time.
Yeah, and I think that people who like know Witt is, who he is, or who like kind of have their idea of who he is, it's just like they know that Utah's been a good program for a long time and has, it was good this year. Obviously, had been very good at the end of the Pac-12. Like obviously had those special runs before moving to the Pac-12, and so there's a long track record of history and not a whole lot of dips there. And I think people just know that Utah has been very consistent over a long period of time. And then you associate that with the head coach. And so I think that what people know about Kyle is those things, right? They don't really know, his personality as well. Cause he's I find him to be a really interesting guy, but he doesn't have the personality that takes over when he's on TV or really in the spotlight in a way that if you weren't necessarily specifically dialed in to watch him or like Utah fans would, you probably wouldn't have a lot of really good memories about who this guy was. It's not, he's not screaming, I'm 40, or, I'm a man, I'm 40. And he doesn't have a moment like that, right? He's just so kind of, calm is probably not the right word, but he's so kind of calculated and measured in the way he approaches everything that I think probably a lot of people kind of respected him from afar without really knowing much about him.
So we're getting word that at this point, really 0 Utah offensive players have decided into the transfer portal. Not to say that that's not going to happen. I mean, we could finish this conversation and refresh the news, and 4 of them could be in the portal. And, we had talked about all the rumors out there as far as who Morgan Scalley was going to hire as the new offensive coordinator after Jason Beck took the job in Michigan. There are rumors that Aaron Roderick at BYU might be an option. There are rumors Jonathan Smith. I mean, we heard a lot of rumors. But Morgan lands on Kevin McGivern, who spent a year at Utah State, and nobody really referenced it as a potential option. Morgan kind of was able to maneuver behind the scenes. Really, the bottom line is Kevin believes in offensive concepts in the same way Jason Beck does. It feels like this is a hire that is made, and I'm sure Morgan, he's not going to make a hire just for one player. I'm sure he believes that Kevin is the guy, and he's going to be the guy for a long time. But it also feels like maybe a potential love letter to Devin Dampier. At least that's how I've kind of processed the news. What do you think?
Yeah, that could be. And I honestly haven't really I haven't done a ton of research on on Kevin or really how he fits the roster. But I do think it was just 2 days ago when he was hired, right? Or 2 or 3 days ago.
Yep.
And so I do think that there is still plenty of time for guys to jump in the portal. I think it makes sense for them to kind of want to know who they're going to get coached for before they make that decision. So I'm sure those meetings have been kind of ongoing since he was hired and trying to get a sense of, hey, this is what it looks like trying to get up to speed on the personnel and having those meetings. And so I'm sure a couple guys will end up in there. It would be crazy if they're able to hang on to everyone just because, the state of play in college football is just so rare. But yeah, Utah State had good numbers this year in the Mountain West. I didn't watch a ton of them, but I know that he, when he was the OC at San Jose State, he was part of the reason Brett Brennan got the head coaching job at Arizona, right? Because they were really moving the ball well when he was the OC there, and so there's some encouraging stops. Beyond that, I don't know enough about him to really weigh in much deeper, but yeah, it certainly makes sense that if you've had success with a certain type of offense, which they certainly did this year, you would want someone, it doesn't need to be the same terminology and all that, but you want to have similar concepts and just kind of play on that, because even if it's one player, it's not just one player, right? It's the way the whole offense operated, right? And so it's, if you can find a quarterback who's got similar skill sets, which they do, right? With Ficklin, really, he's anytime he gets on the field, he's a lot of fun to watch and kind of fits that mold as well. So there's a guy who can run, and we'll really, I guess we'll see eventually how well he can throw the ball, right? But yeah, I think continuity again is with style and scheme made a lot of sense.
When it comes to, while we're in the space of the transfer portal, it just feels odd that it's open while teams are still playing. And yes, the players that are still playing will have additional opportunities to enter the portal. But from a coaching standpoint, Dan Lanning's losing both of his coordinators. One's taking the Kentucky job, the other's taking the Cal job. And if you're Dan, how do you trust that your guys are doing the job to the best of their ability to help you win a national championship, which is the crowning achievement for his profession, and not have their heads with their new jobs, which is, by the way, I think where my head would be. So do you feel like if we're going to have this one portal that's open on January 2nd, the season needs to end on January 1st?
Yeah, I hate the calendar right now. It doesn't make a lot of sense. The silly part is the coach is pushed for this date and having it as one window, and for me it just doesn't. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know anyone who thinks it makes much sense, because you just open it up for this strange dynamic. I mean, there were so many coaches. It's not just the Oregon guys, right? It was Tulane, it was James Madison, it was, there's the Lane Kiffin thing is insane, right? The fact that you can have a head coach leave a program while they're still in the playoffs, and it would be just fantastic if Ole Miss goes and wins the whole thing just to, in spite of that. But yeah, it obviously needs another revamp. But I think like the problem is as I see it, I guess there's a lot of problems too, is that it's because this is still college football, college in air quotes. They're trying to allow players to move before the semester or quarter starts to start the winter, right? And that just doesn't line up with the sporting calendar, with the football calendar. And so, like, my proposal, and I'm sure there's holes in this because there's not really a perfect system, I don't think, is like just get rid of early enrollees for anyone. Like, just don't allow anyone to transfer it. Like, get rid of spring practice, push it back to do it like more of an OTA style, like the NFL does, whether that's in May or June. Like, I don't think it matters, but like, I would say, like, if a guy wants to transfer, that's fine. Like, he can transfer, so he can like stop going to school at the end of December, use, January, February, March to figure out where he wants to go, and then enroll if there's like a late spring quarter or a summer quarter, and just start there. It feels like it would solve a lot of problems. I'm probably overlooking some stuff. It's just kind of off the top, right? But like, it doesn't. I think we know that like spring practice doesn't really matter. Like, you can go to a program after the spring and still be a meaningful contributor. I mean, look, Bear Bachmeier was the quarterback at Stanford in the spring, and he helped BYU to the Big 10 or Big 12 title game as a true freshman. I mean, there's plenty of examples of where guys could be fine as long as everyone's playing with the same rules. Then I don't see what the downside would be. It feels to me like that would solve a lot of the problems.
Wanted to ask you if you foresee any, and I know it's an old topic, but there's a reason I'm asking you. So, we had you on a couple of days after the private equity deal was announced between Utah Athletics and Otro Capital, and ultimately, we're all trying to figure out around here. I know the Salt Lake Tribune and Matt Brown, who just joined us, they filed some public record requests to see what the contract looks like. And Utah has, not surprisingly, not responded to them. I'm not familiar with these dynamics as much as y'all are that are in the space of doing this all the time. But people that try to file their requests seem to paint our government officials as less than cooperative. And maybe that's not too surprising for a number of different reasons. But ultimately, where we've landed here, and I had a couple of conversations over the past week, is that when you're in bed with a private equity firm, your task is to find revenue streams and generate more year to year. And the long game goal, apparently, between Taylor Randall and Otro Capital is Big Ten. Big Ten inclusion for Utah football, and that would answer the question, where are we going to get the money? Where is the revenue coming from? The initial infusion of capital is thought to initially be used to service debt and then provide upgrades to arenas and stadiums. And certainly that'll probably lead to the consumer experience simply being more expensive. But for the bottom line of the singular seminal question, how will we make more money? I've been told the bottom line is the belief is the Big Ten at some point will be the answer to that question. If that is the case, when do you see that happening? And do you find that to be realistic?
I mean, that's awfully ambitious. If you're going to put all your stock in another conference move at this point, I wouldn't operate that way. There's just so many, like, you can't really control that if you're Utah, right? So if this is all designed with that being the end goal, and that's the way you improve your revenue, is like getting another conference switch. Man, that feels like a gamble. It certainly feels like a gamble. Just because there's what incentive will the Big Ten have to expand again, to add Utah or whoever, right? What's going to spur the change to expand again? Like, it doesn't seem like it's happening anytime soon, because if you're getting, like, those teams are getting 100, like the media deal, right, is like $100 million a year in revenue distribution for everyone except for Oregon and Washington, right? So if you add a new team, what you're saying is, like, they are in theory more of that, like, will increase the media value of the conference by more than whatever the current shares are. And so are we saying that Utah is going to be worth $100 million a year to the Big Ten as a new member? That I'd like to see someone make that math work for me, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But yeah, if that's like, I understand why Utah would want to get there. I guess I would have questions about how Otro is going to help them do that, and like why the Big Ten would expand, and if they're going to, like why Utah would be the choice. Maybe there's good answers to that. I'm not like writing it off and saying it's like not possible, but that invites a lot more questions than I have answers for.
How complex is the process of these public record requests, and do you ever get initially what you're looking for, or how long does this take?
It really depends on what the request is. I do a lot of them. I try to make a habit of like doing a few a week just out of practice, because you just never know what you're going to stumble into. And like some of them, honestly, I don't think like you should be able to do. Like I don't think you should be able to public records request, and like, you know, even though I make these because you're allowed to, so it'd be kind of foolish not to. But like I don't think you should be able to public record request someone's like text message exchanges, but you can. And when you do that, you're going to get a lot of pushback from the people involved, because like no one wants to have people have access to their cell phone, their text message conversations. Like it feels like an invasion of privacy. But like if you're a government employee and you're conducting work communication, like theoretically that is subject to public records laws. And so it's a weird deal. I mean, several years ago, when Hugh Freeze was in hot water at Ole Miss, I did a public records request for all like his cell phone records over like, you know, a 3-year period or something like that. There was significant pushback, because this is when he was, as many people will probably remember, this is when he was like chasing adult services illegally on the road on recruiting visits. And so like I was actually able to get, and then like, this is kind of a long-winded, but like they eventually did release the records in full, and it's like a log of 30,000 calls, but they didn't like. But he had the opportunity to black out which numbers were supposedly of a personal nature. I was still able to find several like calls to adult services, but like it's just kind of just one story. Like this is just weird that because you're a public employee, you get access to someone's personal log. But they did fight it, and eventually there was a lot of people pushing for it. So again, long-winded to say, depends on what the ask is. If it's straightforward like a game contract or an employment contract, like those usually get in a couple of days. But if you're looking for like stuff that needs to be vetted and blacked out and redacted and all those things, it can take several months. Even, you know, I had one down in Arizona that took me 2 years to get back one time.
Yeah, I'm glad I don't exist in that space. It sounds exhausting, quite frankly. Hey, before I say you loose, maybe it's just because it's Indiana, but it feels like there are a lot of people that have not necessarily joined the party here, that it feels like they're the best team and have been the best team. No one's ever gone 16-0. I know there's a scheduling component to this, but who do you think is going to take it all now that we're down to 4, and why?
Yeah, I think it's Indiana. I think it's they're the best team. It's for me. It's that simple. We saw them play Oregon on the road. That like Indiana was clearly the better team in that game. Look, it can be flipped. Oregon beat Ohio State and then lost in the playoffs last year, so we could see it happen again. But Indiana's just been. I mean, I was at the Rose Bowl. I saw them up close and personal. I got to be around the team a little bit. Really impressive group, top to bottom. I mean, it kind of feels like a team of destiny at this point. I mean, I was high on them last year. I remember thinking like early in the year, like this doesn't look like a team that is just like 6-0 because of scheduling. It looks like a team that is like a legit Big Ten power, the way they were just handling teams. And so to see them kind of get even better this year, I mean, if they win the whole thing, I think you can make a case that it's the best 2-year coaching job in the history of college football. What Kirk Cignetti has done to flip an absolute, you know, afterthought of a football program into this is, you know, beyond remarkable. And it gives hope to a lot of programs that haven't been blue bloods, and like, hey, like maybe in this era of college football, you are able to level the playing field. It's kind of like the Steph Curry effect on like just like short people in basketball. Hey, like if I just learn how to do this, I can compete in a world that I wouldn't have been able to previously. I found a way to do it, and you know, I don't think Kirk Cignetti is necessarily doing anything like new or revolutionary. He's just doing everything, everything on every level a little bit better than everyone else.
Kyle, great stuff, man. I'm going to let you go so you can study Utah State film from a year ago so we can break down the new. There was a reason I didn't ask you to break down the Utah State offensive attack, but I always appreciate the time, man. Have a good week, okay?
You just, yeah.
Kyle Bonagura covers college football for ESPN. At Bonagura, ESPN is where you find him. Brian Regan is taking over the Delta Center on February the 14th. Celebrate love with Brian Regan. That's my message today. Celebrate Valentine's Day with Brian Regan. ESPN 700 wants to send you a pair of tickets to the show. Tune in to the OC show all week to win. Details can be found at ESPN700sports.com. All right, about an hour away from the Alex Jensen Coaches Show, but the final hour of the program on a Monday afternoon comes your way next on ESPN 700. All right, Drive at 5 time, Monday afternoon style, 9 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock. Continue to have a rather mild winter. It was about 42 degrees earlier. It's about 43 right now. It is cloudy. I think we're getting a lot of snow in the mountains, which is good. It's supposed to be kind of another wet yet warm-ish week for a January winter in Salt Lake. Certainly, happy Monday to you. Hopefully you're off to a great start to the work week. The Monday after the holidays at times can feel a little bit dragging, so hopefully you're enjoying yourself. Been a lively show today with a lot going on. Kind of a random busy night in local sports as well. The Utah Mammoth are at the world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden, taking on the New York Rangers. That puck was just dropped about 5 minutes ago or so. No score in the first. Utah Jazz will be up in Portland to take on the Blazers tonight. Does not look like Ace Bailey will play for the Jazz. NBA trade deadline is 1 month away from today. The Jazz involved in a lot of potential scenarios. So we'll kind of move our coverage over into the world of pro basketball as football is inching closer and closer to an end. And speaking of which, don't forget we are your home of the CFP, the college football playoffs. Continue this week. We are down to the Final Four. I think we're going to have two really good football games, two very different dynamics. Your Vegas favorite, kind of by a long shot, is Indiana, and right behind them is Oregon. Those two teams play on Friday night. That is the Peach Bowl down in Atlanta, Georgia. And on Thursday, it will be kind of the two Cinderella stories, Miami and Ole Miss in Glendale for the Fiesta Bowl. The playoff matchups in the world of the NFL are set to unfold coming up this weekend. We saw an unbelievably dramatic Sunday night game as Aaron Rodgers and the Pittsburgh Steelers were able to get it done, beating Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson became the first quarterback in NFL history to have two passes of more than 50 yards to take a lead in the fourth quarter, and it wasn't enough. Hit Zay Flowers twice in the fourth, but the Steelers were able to get it done. It was a Tyler Loop missed field goal. And now the regular season in the NFL is done. No Monday Night Football tonight. We will bring you the Alex Jensen Coaches Show coming up when we say goodnight at 6. Your weekend in pro football begins on Saturday. The Rams will take on the Panthers in the NFC wild card. And Packers and Bears are your other NFC wild card as well. And then on Sunday, Bills, Jags, Niners, Eagles, Chargers, Patriots, and then Texans, Steelers. That will be your Monday night game. So a busy week ahead of both college and pro football. The transfer portal in the world of college football is open. And the trouble about trying to report any of this stuff is I'll just say I haven't seen anything very seismic and official today for either Utah or BYU. Smith Snowden is set to make a number of different visits, including Michigan. John Henry Daly set to make a number of different visits, including Michigan. According to reports, John Henry Daly will also visit Notre Dame. Teo Johnson is out there. But no one really of note on the offensive side of the football for Utah has elected to hit the transfer portal as of yet. I'm not saying it won't happen. I mean, like I said, the trouble of trying to ultimately report this stuff is that it's very fluid and it could change at any moment. But a lot of people wondering what the future looks like for Utah football now that it is Morgan Scalley's time. And what will it look like on the offensive side? Will it look different under Morgan than it did under Witt? And do any of these hires, can we read the tea leaves at all with any of these hires about ultimately what Utah football will look like on offense coming up next season? Now, Kevin McGivern has been hired as the offensive coordinator here in Salt Lake for the Utes. McGivern was up with Bronco Mendenhall and the Aggies for 1 year. And Bronco Mendenhall taps Robert Anai, brings Robert Anai out of retirement to take the job that Kevin McGivern left behind. No news on the defensive coordinator position for BYU either. So, of course, things continue to be extremely fluid. And we have not heard an official announcement for Devin Dampier. It does appear that Bert Ficklin has reaffirmed his commitment. And, yeah, we're just going to have to kind of wait it out. Of course, the talking points today have been about Morgan's staff and what it's going to look like and what it means for the future of Utah football. Linebackers coach Colton Swan has been elevated to defensive coordinator, as you guys know, just continuing that succession pipeline. As Morgan Scalley was heavily influenced by Kyle Whittingham, I would imagine Colton Swan will be heavily influenced. by Morgan Scalley. Former Ute lineman and 11-year NFL vet Jordan Gross will take over the offensive line, a role vacated by Jim Harding. And of note, Jordan has spent the last 4 seasons as the head coach of Fruitland High School in Idaho, where he mentored 5-star Utah commit Kelvin Obot. And with Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu headed to the NFL draft, maintaining Kelvin's commitment was a very, very big deal. And yes, you make your hire more than just keeping one player in mind, but this was a very important player, among the highest rated recruits in the history of Utah football. Derek Odom played defensive back for Utah from 89 to 92. He is coming back to his alma mater. Chad Bumpus, who I happened to interview when he first took the job. He coached Utah's wideouts for a couple of years. He spent the last 3 seasons at Mississippi State, and now he's coming back to Salt Lake. So Morgan, piece by piece, is filling out his staff after his staff was pillaged by the former head coach, Kyle Whittingham. So any news, of course, that we get, we'll bring it to you on the program. You can also check out our socials. But expecting a little bit more like official news out of the gates today, and we just didn't get a ton. I want to remind you, programming notes. Starting tomorrow at 2 o'clock, maybe even a little bit prior to, we will bring you the official introductory press conference to introduce Morgan Scalley as the new head coach for Utah football. So that will take up a good portion of the start of our show tomorrow. So right off the bat at 2 o'clock, we're going to bring you the live coverage of the introductory press conference from Morgan Scalley. OC will be up there doing his show, so he'll make sure to have all the coverage. And, of course, we'll break it down coming up tomorrow All right, we got the Alex Jensen Coaches Show coming up on the other side. Utah basketball will be back in action on Wednesday at 7 o'clock against Colorado. You can hear that game on our radio station as your home of the Utes. Coming up on Saturday, BYU is in town for an 8 o'clock tip, late tip at the Huntsman Center. Conference play began with a rough one against one of the best teams in America. Big 12 is the best basketball conference in America this year. It was the SEC a year ago. I think it's the Big 12 this year. Arizona is a national championship contender. The Koa Pete kid might be a top 5 pick. It's going to be a long year for Utah basketball. We'll continue to cheer for our guy, Alex, and hope that he gets some support and is able to upgrade the talent. They've got 2 pretty talented scoring guards in Terrence Brown and Don McHenry, but it's kind of one-on-one stuff. So we'll let you hear from Riles and the coach of the Utes coming up on the other side. No Monday Night Football, which is weird, but the weekend ahead in both college and pro football should be a lot of fun. So there you go. Tony Bradley was waived by the Pacers today. I don't know if you saw that.
Okay.
Just whenever I hear the name Tony Bradley, I just remember our guy Tony Jones going all in on the he thought he was going to be like an all-star, and he's really not an NBA player.
And I know he made a wager, if you will.
Steak dinner, right?
About him being a decade-long pro. Listen.
Is that all it was, a decade-long pro?
Listen.
I thought it was more than that.
No, that was the wager, but then Tony, I believe, wasn't in the league for a good amount of time. He wasn't in the league maybe for a year. So Tony paid out on that bet. He took our friend Eric Walden to dinner. But now we're sitting here, Spence. Tony Bradley was, drafted in 2017 by the Utah Jazz. So if he finds his way on a roster for the next 2 years, I guess we may have to revisit that. Tony may have to give back a steak dinner.
Wait, hold on. Are you sure it was only that he would be an NBA player for a decade?
Yeah.
That's all it was.
And because he was cut and not signed a few years ago, they consummated the deal. They went to steak dinner. But Tony Bradley, as of yesterday, was in the league. Maybe you can find another spot for a year or two.
Huh. Oh, it was Jared Butler who he said was going to be an all-star. The Jazz guard who, yeah.
That was true.
Tony's got some outrageous takes, but we'll get Tony on soon. He's doing a good job covering the 76ers. Jazz in action, taking on the Blazers tonight. Utah Mammoth are at Madison Square Garden, taking on the New York Rangers, but, of course, continuing the conversation with college and pro football. Look, you're more plugged into this stuff than I am because I continue to come in every segment looking for news. My understanding at this point is really no notable Utah offensive players have elected to enter the transfer portal. Have you heard anything that I'm not hearing?
Yeah, no, outside of, Racine Gilroy, who's headed to LSU, a kid who redshirted, he was a big recruit, but didn't get much out of the Utes. Obviously, Smith Snowden contributed a bit on the offensive side, and Teo Johnson, a good safety. But, yeah, it appears early Morgan is holding things together and bringing his staff in, at least to give an argument to stay at Utah. So there's not an exodus, at least on days 1 and 2 in the portal.
Give me your Kevin McGivern breakdown. A lot of rumors around A-Rod, a lot of rumors around Jonathan Smith, a lot of rumors around other coaches. Morgan did this covert. I mean, no one referenced the potential hire of Kevin McGivern. This feels like a hire that may be a bit of a love letter to Devin Dampier because he plays the similar style. It has the similar offensive concepts as Jason Beck. The question is this a good or a bad hire? I don't know. Only time will tell. But what do you think?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, we'll see. But I like Kevin McGivern, and a lot of the stuff he did at Utah State was more with less, right? A guy who put up a bunch of numbers with Bryson Barnes and other quarterbacks before him. A lot of wide receivers that probably outperformed what production you'd expect from them. So, yes, it is partly because he runs a similar offense to Jason Beck, and there will be some symmetry there. But he also came in late in the process and just kind of wowed in his interview. And they like what the guy does, and he's familiar with a lot of the guys on staff, so there's some continuity there as well. But as you said, time will tell on all of these hires.
Yeah, I mean, as I have said all day today, I'll continue to reiterate, as a Ute fan, you put your trust in your coach, and you could do a lot worse than trusting a guy like Morgan Scalley, I can promise you that. All right, time to get out of here. It's time for the Alex Jensen Coaches Show. Porter, what comes our way on a busy Tuesday show?
Yeah, we'll start it off, as you mentioned, 2 o'clock. Morgan Scally introduces the head football coach. I'll be up there running the 1s and 2s, and then I'll jet down here for the drive. Stevens and Sylvester, Brett Ciancia of Pick 6 previews. And then, hey, we're going to talk some NBA hoops with Tim McMahon.
All right, there you go. And 1 month away from the NBA trade deadline. Ultimately, a lot of rumors about what the Jazz may do, so it'll be fun to catch up with Timmy tomorrow. Special thank you today to Aaron Falk, Richard Smith, Matt Brown, and Kyle Bonagura. A lot of really good college football conversation today regarding Utah's new staff, Coach Wood at Michigan, transfer portal, new defensive coordinator at BYU, and the like. If you missed any of it, go to the website, which is ESPN700sports.com. Download our mobile app and take us on the go. ESPN 700 app available in the App Store and the Google Play Store. And then finally, for what we do in our space every afternoon, in the afternoon drive space for 4 hours, check out our podcast page. And if you have time, please become a follower, a subscriber. Say nice things in the comments. Give us all the stars. It helps. Reporter, I'm Spence saying goodnight. Alex Jensen Coaches Show comes up on the other side of a quick break right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700.